before we delve into today's content, we could perhaps spend some 10, 15 minutes in just doing a recap on some of the ground that was covered yesterday, if it is okay with you, Carabello. We are going to be consolidating all the handouts. There are a number of things that I've made note of from our session yesterday, and I'm sure even today, a couple of things would come through. So we're going to be consolidating all those, including the PowerPoint presentation, and there's also a guide or a manual that has been written up around this topic. So do look out for that mail shot in due course post today's session. If not, what are we now, Wednesday? If not late this week, it will probably be sometime next week that we will send everything, including the recordings of these last 2 days. There isn't much today from my side as we begin, but just maybe hand over the time and session to Garabel. Garabello?
Sorry, let me try again. Thank you, John, and good morning, everybody. I see faces. I see names from yesterday. Is there anybody yet in the room who did not manage to join yesterday? Maybe if you can give us a wave or a sort of a message in the chat. I guess we're just curious, but we'll do a small recap. Okay, we see Lungelo there, wasn't here yesterday, and Linda. Okay. All right, perfect. All right. Maybe Lungelo and Linda, if you would, while we are just getting set up quickly, just maybe briefly where you're from and sort of yeah, what role would you like to play within the sector? I guess you know, just it helps us give us an understanding of some of the, I guess, the attendees. Are you currently in social housing or something that you're exploring?
Hi, my name is Lungelo. We are not yet in social housing. I am from an entity named Belvedere, who is currently in the process of getting accredited.
Yeah.
So we think this would be a great place to start. Thanks.
Pleasure. Thank you. And that's SHI accreditation, Lungelo? You?
Yes.
Oh, great. Welcome. Linda?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself. I am interested in just learning more and upskilling my knowledge on what's currently happening in the social housing sector. Thank you.
Perfect. And what was the call to social housing, Linda? Like, how did you find out? I guess I'm curious. I'm also trying to also figure out if you're the Linda that I
I am the
across.
Linda that you know.
All right. No, I thought so.
You know.
No, I thought so.
It's just being in the sector and assisting different entities at different times.
While we wait for him,
No,
I
got
want
you.
to
No,
ask you something this morning.
I was fishing, but I've got you, Linda.
Yes, so just upskilling my information. Thank you.
What is the meaning for Christmas for you?
John and
what
just
is
help
the
me with
meaning
muting
for
everybody. Then the guys
Christmas
that
for
want to
you?
speak will unmute.
Christmas mean to you? Because of
I think Thomas there is having a internal meeting which we don't want to be a part of. Thomas, are you back? Are you safe for us to unmute you? Okay, cool. We'll move along. Thomas will come back. All right, cool. No hundreds. All right.
I have enabled the mics now. Let's hear Thomas.
Right. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I joined late yesterday, and I never had a chance to introduce myself. So, as I'm taking the advantage that you asked Linda, the other person, to introduce, so I thought I should introduce myself as well because I joined late. Yeah, my name is Thomas Ramafola. I am interested in the social housing. What I've been doing all along has been I specialize in ceiling as well as any cupboard in the housing, like from kitchen, bedroom, and such. Those are the things I've been doing in small space, basically as a small medium enterprise. But right now, I'm interested in joining and moving into this.
Okay.
No. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Thomas. So I guess it's carpentry work, eh? Is that what it's called?
It's carpentry work, yeah. Carpentry work, that's what I've been busy with. Also plumbing as well. Okay.
Oh, hundreds. No, cool. Great, man, Thomas. And certainly I think yesterday we spoke about, I guess as SMME, as professionals within, I guess our own environment, looking at social housing as an opportunity or a growth area. And also just being clear that we don't all have to be developers. Yes, let's be developers. Let's develop this thing and create social housing and create housing in great location. But I think certainly people will be coming with different skills. We understand we've got, built environment professionals. We've got architects. We've got some, town planners as well. So all of those skills play a role within the sector. So perhaps, I think at a growth level, you say, all right, these are my services. I'm a town planner. I can assist with rezoning. We've got colleagues from the Northwest who have pieces of land that want to grow and develop social housing. So I think certainly, everybody's welcome. Just to do a quick recap of, I guess, our session yesterday, but also just speak to what we will be covering today. I just want to see quickly. Yeah. Okay. I just want to bear with me. Sorry, let me stop sharing that. I just want to go back to the agenda from yesterday. Here we go. All right, got it. So we just want to do a very brief recap on yesterday and what we covered. But really it was sort of setting the scene, right? So we spent quite a bit of time in the morning speaking about how social housing fits within the South African context, within the South African population, looking at both slightly to a small extent, looking at the amount of, what the public sector does as well as what the private sector does, looking at the percentage or ratios on what is available as freestanding houses, the size of the rental market. And I think sort of one of the big takeouts, and colleagues feel free to jump in as well, is really that, the rental, public rental, which is what social housing is a very small component of a bigger housing market, right? So we obviously have people who own their own properties. We have people that are renting from private landlords, but then there's also a sub-market of public rentals as well, which is included in the social housing, which includes social housing. I'm just going to share maybe one or two screens of, I guess, some of the key takeouts that we thought were quite strong and should form part of the recap. Let me get my share button. There we go. Cool. Refresh. Let's see. There we go. Okay, perfect. So I think we spent quite a bit of time on the slide just to set the scene on the size of the property market in South Africa. Just also emphasizing urbanization, right? We are all moving. We are all South African population. We are all moving from rural areas, from our townships into the urban environment because there's more economic opportunities. Better access to schools, facilities, amenities. And there is an anticipation that just approximately about 70% odd of South Africa is forecast to be in an urban area by 2030. So think about it from an opportunity perspective, an opportunity for social housing, an opportunity in I guess your business as a professional, as somebody in the built environment. So that was, I guess, sort of a thematic point from yesterday. Then this slide really visualizing the amount of rental accommodation in the country, right? We spoke about 4,300 odd units that is rental in the country, and only 400,000 of that being in the public space. So, i.e., government owned or quasi-government owned. Then on the right-hand side, I think this graph just showing there's about approximately 38,000 social housing units. We've got 37,513. These are social housing units across the country. Then there's another program yesterday that we touched on from government called Community Residential Units, CRU, and CRU being the old hostel program, but that has now been I guess upgraded and it's been upgraded over a period of time. Then the other balance just making up other different stocks that is owned across the country by the public, primarily being driven by or owned by the municipalities. So that was sort of our setting the scene theme. But an important slide as well that we spent quite a bit of time on just to give good context of the size of the market that social housing aims to serve is this income distribution slide on social housing in the country, right? So if you look at the graph, let me get my laser. So on the left side is the number of households in the country, not the number of population, right? Just to emphasize, we've got about 62 million odd, but these are individual household. And there on the right is just the percentage distribution of the same amount. Then at the bottom, we had put in the different income bands, social housing income bands, but as well as the number or the income distribution according to census. But really here we wanted to emphasize that if you look at the red block, these are households earning from 1,850 to 22,000, which is the social housing target market, right? So if you look at this big block, this represents, the target market for social housing. And it really is the largest distribution of household income in the country. From the top of my head, the sum of these made up about 56% of South Africa. And I think if you also look, I think the unfortunate thing as well, if you look at this graph, so people earning less than 1,850 make up the highest proportion of income earners in the country, 26%, and 9% as well of households that don't have an income. But nonetheless, we operate in the space, and it's about 56% of South Africa's household, which is the target market for social housing. So just to kind of bring the point around, the market that we operate in, and it is a large market. In the details, it'll be also a function of your actual location, whether you in Northwest, in the Eastern Cape, in Gauteng. There will be some differences in nuances on the local market, but this is a general South African view. I'm just gonna jump through the slides that I think were a bit key. I guess the intent of social housing, right? So this was quite key in that, the program, for those that were not able to join us, is about social, economic, and spatial integration and transformation, right? At a social level, we are saying that we want people of different incomes, of different, different incomes, genders to live in social housing. Whether you earn 1,000 rand or fine, you shouldn't earn 1,000 rand, whether you earn 2,000 or you earn 15,000, let us live together cohesively. We spoke about economic integration. So, the program itself through the capital subsidy, stimulating economic growth, and equally spatial integration being quite key as a fundamental objective of the program to say that let us undo spatial apartheid planning, where the poor live furthest from economic opportunities and the wealthy live closer to economic opportunities, where there is infrastructure, where there are facilities. So let us really, I think at a program level, we want to push for spatial integration where your income does not determine where you live. And that's quite an important principle of the social housing program, and why ourselves and others are very strong advocates of the program. And you must think, in other cities, like Cape Town, where property is very expensive in well-located areas, and now people have to live out in Khayelitsha or further out in Delft, further from economic opportunities. Not because they don't want to, but because things are just unaffordable, or rental is quite strongly unaffordable. So that was a strong theme that we touched on, and I think this summarizes quite a few of the next slides. We spoke about regulation, but I just want to speak to maybe spend 2 more minutes on the legislative framework. Just emphasizing there, we're saying that where does social housing policy come from? Firstly, we have the overarching, I guess, legal framework in the Constitution and the Housing Act. And social housing is only one of a number of programs by government. The other one is BNGs or RDPs, as we used to call them. The other one would be community residential units. We've got informal settlement upgrades and others. So just to sort of emphasize that, obviously, particularly in social housing, we are, what's the word? We work on the act, or we regulated by the Social Housing Act and its regulation of 2008. Emphasizing as well that the SHRA and national government also have powers to also issue directives and declarations and guidelines over and above the regulation, in order to, I guess, if they want to, it's just a quicker way to, and we call that subordinate legislation, where the SHRA, the department, can issue instructions. So I think high level, that's the framework, with an emphasis on the act and the regulation. But, I think we also live in a country, an economy where there's other cross-cutting legislation, right? So we don't only have to adhere to the act, but things like the Rental Housing Act, the Prevention of Illegal Eviction and Unlawful Occupation, also known as PI, right, which determines whether the processes to be followed if we want to evict somebody from our properties. And I think a lot of us in the room will have some or other experience with PI. But we also, I guess, asked the question on National Credit Act. Is the NCR applicable in social housing? Is a lease agreement a credit agreement? Therefore, the NCR would apply. We put it to the I guess to the attendees. I must now think quickly. There was another one that we asked. It was the Consumer Protection Act. That's it as well, right? Does the Consumer Protection Act apply to social housing, be it on the landlord side, developer side, or tenant side? And would that also be considered a cross-cutting legislation? Just want to move my screen so I can see Teams. All right, there we go. Right. But I think, that's, I think from a social housing policy, we went through the definitions, the objectives. I think we've spoken about, especially on spatial, economic, and social transformation. An important slide, colleagues, just to maybe just before I close on, was the slide on the rental income bands, right? Being very fundamental to the social housing program. So our rental income bands, to be eligible for social housing, you must earn 1,850 to 3.5. And let me rather say from 1,850 to 22,000 rand. But these are broken down into 5 different income bands, and how you, my laser's gone. So let me come back. Did I go too far? Yeah, there we go. And just to emphasize that it's important that in a social housing project, you have a mix of different incomes, but the Shra and the department also recognize that you have to have a higher percentage of people that earn a greater income so that you are receiving rent that would make your project sustainable. So remember, if you're earning in the first income bracket, on average, you are paying, or those tenants are paying on average about 700 Rand, if I point you there. On the second income bracket, between 3.5 and 6.7, on average, those tenants are paying 1.4. So if you want to be sustainable and build more social housing and be able to do your planned maintenance and upkeep the building, you need a bit more income, which is why the program has other income brackets. I think that the term that we like to use in the industry and the sector is cross-subsidization. So you want a higher income to cross-subsidize the lower income that you would receive, so that your project and your entity is sustainable. So this is an important table. Also emphasizing, I think here, just to reconfirm, it's the different income spread. So referring to the 5%. 5% of people that earn that income must be there. And I'll skip to the last one. If people that earn from 15,000 to 22,000 can be up to 15% of the building. And that's how you would interpret this particular spreadsheet, and how you would also think about your I guess a potential project. Yeah, hey, just also maybe reflect if you want to do a project in a particular area, because your project, or as a social housing institution, you are not in isolation, right? So I use the example, I'm from Pretoria, in the township called Garangua. And, if I do social housing there, which, never mind, I think the spatial restructuring component, if I want to charge for a 2-bedroom apartment, a minimum rental of 5.2, what is the competing product? How much can people rent a 2-3 bedroom house in Garangua, or anywhere else for, right? Because people will not pay necessarily far more versus what they can get elsewhere. So I think as practitioners, developers in the sector, you always have to do market demand studies. And we spoke about a few of the market demand studies also being available. The Shra does a few provincial studies. And if people want to have access, I think they should be on their website, but you can also speak to John just around which ones are available, so that you can start filtering and seeing where different incomes are within your province. But also use tools like Property 24, what is it, privateproperty.co.za, to see where rentals are in your market, right? You can select your suburb, your area, just to get a feel of how much is a 2-bedroom costing. If I were to put a 2-bedroom apartment in Rustenburg, where should I be charging? So there's a lot of public information that's available that you can start using just to make high-level assessments. Okay. I'm just going to skip these. But an important one, just to recap on, was the implementation framework. We've got an instrument called the restructuring zones, and restructuring zones being very clearly demarcated areas where social housing can happen. If you own a piece of land that is outside of a restructuring zone, you cannot, unfortunately, build social housing. You will not be eligible for the consolidated capital grant. To find out where these restructuring zones are, you can visit the Shra's website. I think it's shra.org.za. Under resources tab, there's I think a drop down there for restructuring zones, and we've made some of these links available. If Mpho is on the call still, if I can just ask as well, because there's another portal that you can use called the Social Housing Portal. .org.za. And the social housing portal, it's an interactive website that a few stakeholders, including the Shra, National Human Sciences Research Council, have developed. and we keep it updated every 6 months with the latest information on projects across the country, what is in planning, what is available, and I think you can also see restructuring zones a bit to a small extent. But please make use of those publicly available tools to inform yourself about what is available. The Social Housing Act, regulations, institutional arrangements. So today we'll spend a bit more time on institutional arrangements, the different roles of government, the role of the Shura, the role of the SHIs, and as well as, I guess, funders as well. A good tip, and we'll maybe just put it back, is we also spend some time discussing where do you go for money, right? Where can you knock? On which doors can you knock? I remember some colleagues went to the NEF, and the NEF at the time said we're no longer, or we're not doing social housing. But DBSA is a big funder, NHF, let me not say a big funder, but they're a funder of social housing most recently. Is DBSA Infrastructure Fund, and also noting provincial DFIs. I think colleagues spoke about exploring KZN Growth Fund. In Gauteng, we've got the Gauteng Partnership Fund, GPF, and they've been funding social housing for quite a number of years, but you have to be in Gauteng. Colleagues, yeah, I think maybe that's I guess what I just maybe want to highlight. Are there any questions that maybe you want to reflect on or ask about yesterday that maybe, yeah, I guess, after the training, you thought, no, man, something didn't make sense. Or, maybe even to correct us, maybe I even conveyed some incorrect information. I'll definitely, accept the correction or note it. Right, cool. No, thanks, Paul. I see you putting up the different available public resources as well on the chat group. But yeah, please, let's make use of the chat just to, I guess discuss, or if you have any questions, use that. But during the presentation as well, we'll go through some we'll have little slots for Q&As. I think it helps us a lot as presenters. If there are questions, then we can focus on key areas of interest. I'm just going to the latest slide. While I do that, just to also mention, because it's important, just that number again on what the CCG, the Consolidated Capital Grant. So if you were to do a social housing project, the Shura would give you 426,000 and a few cents. So the value of a CCG, but also acknowledging that to build, depending on what you are building and where you are building, might cost you the 426, or it might cost you 500,000. And the difference is really, as a developer, you would either find equity. You would say, I've got some savings. I'm going to plug in my savings. I've got the land, and I've got, I guess, the fees that I've paid to professionals, and that contributes as equity. I think what there isn't, the Shura does not value sweat equity. I know entrepreneurs like to speak about sweat equity. So unfortunately, in the program, your sweat equity is good. It's recognized, but we are working with financial models, and things have to independently be proven. If your asset equity is, or your equity is obviously the land that you've bought, the value of the work that has been done by yourself, by consultants, but it is easily measurable, then it's a different discussion. But unfortunately, you can't say, hey, this is my concept and it's worth 10,000 rand. We're dealing with bricks and mortar. The brick, we know a brick is, I don't know how much a brick is now, 195, 250. I haven't bought a brick in a while. But cool. I think, I just wanted to emphasize that some colleagues are considering being ODAs, as well as SHIs, but we spoke at length about the requirement that SHIs, you can look for debt and go to the NHFC, but as an ODA, you are required to have a minimum of 20% equity. If that equity at 20% is still not enough, then you are also allowed a maximum of additional 10% of, I guess, debt or however you need. But this is a function of how much your development cost is, right? So if your development cost is less, you would therefore maybe not need to go and borrow money, and you would still then just say, okay, this is my equity. And an important principle as well, just around if you're as an ODA, because you must submit or provide equity, the Shara will then assess whether the money that they're giving you, does it need, like, yeah, should we deduct your equity contribution towards the CCG, or is it a top up? So just some details there. But colleagues, really, some of these details are discussed in a lot more detail in the other programs that is run by the Shara. And I've got a slide as well on that we'll just touch on so that you are aware of what is available. The program of Introduction to Social Housing itself is intended just to be a teaser or I guess a light touch for you to understand the bigger picture, and start making assessment and saying, okay, do I want to proceed? Is this something I want to get to, and in which space I will occupy? Go for it, Batlalife.
I wanted to ask to get clarity on the structure of the SHI. Is it supposed to be an MPC? It can be an MPC or PTY, or is it just the rule is that it must be an MPC? Because that's what I'm not sure.
All right, hundreds. No, very good question. And we're going to spend quite a bit of time on that today. Just discussing the different legal forms that an SHI can be, and also the advantages and disadvantages, because I'm curious though to ask, are you, what's the word? Less inclined to be an NPC? Are there reasons that would gravitate you towards being a PTY SHI? That I make no know. Yeah, cool. But yeah.
No, I'm not.
Just curiosity.
I'm not really sure because I'm still exploring. So now I was not sure whether the information I got regarding the legal structure is the correct one. So
no, 100%. Yeah. No, we'll actually spend maybe about 2 or 3 slides on it today. Thanks. But colleagues, yeah, I think that was a sort of quite a detailed recap just to bring back everybody on board. Just to let's go to the next slide. Yeah, it's quite bold. So what we want to cover today is the institutional arrangements. We'll spend the time on the role of national government agencies, the role of the Shara. We'll spend a bit of time as well just discussing the accreditation process, right? How to become an SHI, that exact question from Batlalife on what should I consider? Should I be an NPC, a PTY? What's advantages and disadvantages, accreditation and compliance? Maybe after the break, we'll go into the details a bit more, the practical details of the business of social housing institutions, delivering projects, management of social housing, and property management, but some slightly more practical consideration. But I think that this is the sort of the plan for today. If once again there's something that you feel that we must add or we shouldn't miss, put it in the chat, or put your hand and then we can attend to it. Cool. All right, I'm gonna push on. We've done the recap. I think this is well covered. Then we want to now go into the institutional arrangements, right? Just have to change my PowerPoint. So when we say institutional or delivery institutional arrangements, what we mean is who are the stakeholders or the institutions responsible or that participate in the delivery of social housing. So high on the list would be the three spheres of government, right? So we've got national government, provincial government, as well as local government that operate, and we'll get into the details. We've got housing agencies like the SHRA, National Housing Finance Corporation, and the HDA. And we haven't spent too much time on the HDA, but really the HDA is one of the Department of Human Settlements agencies that are responsible for land identification and project implementation for, I guess, for government, right? So they would find land for BNGs. They would also implement housing programs or projects on behalf of municipalities. So they're quite a key stakeholder. Why we all around this call today is around social housing institutions and ODAs as delivery agents. And broadly, I know yesterday we had some municipal-owned entities. So we tend to refer, not tend to, because municipal-owned entities like Joshco and Ekurhuleni are accredited with the SHRA. They are therefore considered or qualify as social housing institutions. So while I might not speak of MOEs, we count them as SHIs. And lastly, as mentioned, professionals, right? Developers, contractors, they form part of the institutional arrangements in social housing. This is a very nice diagram that really summarizes the institutional arrangement. So I'll spend a bit of time on it. We spoke about national government. National government is obviously responsible for national legislation, the Social Housing Act, in our areas, the regulations, but also gazetting of restructuring zones. So that sits within the national ambit. But equally then the SHRA being an entity of the Department of Human Settlements. So they've got a straight line there. And from a key stakeholder perspective, the SHRA then works closely with provinces and municipalities. What is important to highlight on provinces and municipalities is that as part of your project approval or project submission process, you need to have both municipal support or municipal support as well as provincial support. And what this means very practically is that you have to go to your municipality and say, I don't know, I'm just now think, what's a municipality? City of Tshwane. I want to build social housing project on corner Church Street and I don't know, Solomon Mahlangu on RF 12345. This is in line with your IDP processes, and the municipality will issue you with a letter to say that we support company XYZ in developing social housing in our municipality. And you take that letter to the next step as well. Okay. So a similar process is also followed with province. Equally, the provinces the different provinces where there's social housing meet every quarter, and we present projects, or developers would present projects to say that in my company, this is the project that we want to do. And equally, then there is an endorsement letter provided by province to support your project. And only then, and some of these processes happen at the same time, then you go back to the SHRA and say, I've got my municipal support letter, I've got my provincial support letter, and province linked to this PSCs. Just to explain, these are provincial steering committees. And this is the name of the committee where provinces meet on a quarterly basis to assess projects, but broadly to support the social housing program. So that's municipalities. We touched on restructuring zones from a regulation, land incentives. So municipalities, if you then look at the color coordination, so we're saying municipalities would typically look at incentives for social housing. How do they incentivize you as a landlord? Can you acquire a piece of land from a municipality to build? Can they sell it to you? Can they do it on long-term lease? But then also aligned to it is restructuring zones. So they would identify the restructuring zones, but national government would gazette it. Okay. So that's a summary of, I guess, the top part of this. And then at the bottom, we are just showing the different service providers or stakeholders within social housing. Shame I probably understate Tough. Tough have also it's one of the lenders that people can knock on as well, and they've got a national footprint. If you are looking for lending, they have sort of looked at one or two projects in the past. So please knock on their doors. But we spoke about earlier in the recap quite a number of lenders that are not a lot, but quite a few lenders in the space that operate there. Social housing institutions, including MOEs and ODAs. And just to say, I guess at an implementation level, as an SHI ODA, you would have either development agreements or lending agreements with the different stakeholders. And then that's a very sort of diagrammatical view of the different role players. And as an SHI ODA, you need to have sight of these things. You don't want to find out later that you must go to province. You don't want to find later that you must go to municipalities. And once again, at the municipalities for this program, our typical interface is the human settlements department, right? So between planning and human settlements, that's typically who you would interface with. Yeah, I'm gonna, I guess, skip through the slide, but once it's shared, you'll be able to go through it. It really is I guess, sort of a detailed bullet point on the role of national, province, as well as municipalities. But I think we've covered this to some good extent. Once again, I think we provide some of these details, the role of national, provinces. But there is an increasing drive, especially when we get to local government, by the SHRA to encourage and capacitate local municipalities to be able to support you as an SHI, right? So what we know is that social housing is not an easy program. The margins are thin. And when you go and you are submitting your building plans and I guess the local municipality says you must you must pay development contributions and you must pay for building application fees. So some of the more robust municipalities are starting to say, no, man, this is a government program. Let us incentivize it. Let us make it easy for developers and the SHRA by having incentives, right? So I'll make some practical examples. In city of Johannesburg, if you are delivering social housing, you get a 40% discount on your rates and taxes. In Eastern Cape, if you are, and probably the Western Cape as well, when you are running as a social housing, they have some incentives as well. I think your rates and taxes are about 75% off. The 6 kiloliters of water for your tenants, sewage is reduced, refuse is reduced. So there's a big drive from the SHRA and ourselves as, I guess, stakeholders in the sector, NASHO, to go and advocate for social housing so that municipalities understand their role. But yeah, I think the role is quite, must not be understated. Just want to do this quickly. Okay, cool. But yeah, really, I think the slide also just emphasizing the institutional arrangements and role of local government. I guess it's at a budget level, at a policy level. We want social housing to form part of the IDP processes, and maybe the planners will help because another sort of a longer term framework for 4 or 5 years that RSDF, I think is probably the acronym, but if anybody can help me out there, please do. Because we want social housing as a program to be part of these things, we want them to identify restructuring zones, release land, most importantly, and enter into partnership agreements with, I guess, delivery agents. So this is a sort of a high-level overview or summary of the role that local government plays in the social housing sector. So maybe I must also say, please don't go to municipalities and say, or let me rephrase that. If you are engaging with a municipality and you are looking for a piece of land, and the municipality says, okay, Mr. Boy, we will give you the piece of land. You can sign an offer to purchase or a long-term lease agreement. Here is the document. I think we want to caution delivery agents that to receive a piece of land, it has to go through a public process. There's a lot of background information where councils have to have resolutions, where there must be a public participation, where the municipality advertises the release of land. And if you are sort of caught, or if at the end you receive this offer, but a few of the steps were not followed internally by the municipality, you'll always be at risk of at a later on, or if the SHRA or any funder or somebody else checks those ticks and balances, you might find that you could be in a difficult position. So it's important that municipalities also follow the process. As a public, we generally don't know what the process is. So, but I know from a SHRA and others, there are some checks and balances where, I guess advice is available. But it's also about you knowing to ask the right questions, right? Yes, you can get the piece of land, but it must sort of accrue to you with the right process. Otherwise, the land can be taken back. So just be careful around some of these little details. Yeah, cool. I'm just gonna move sort of through these slides while emphasizing one or two points, especially on local government. I just want to see at the bottom, we speak about SHIs, ODAs, obviously accreditation with the SHRA, and at an RFP level or a bid for land release, and the different arrangements. So I think it's quite intensive, but I think from a contracting perspective, we just want to emphasize that you want to contract well with municipalities, but equally just to say that as a developer, the Social Housing Act allows you to get land from any public or land on a long-term lease from any public entity, right? So we've got a lot of cases where developers entered into long-term lease agreement with Prasa most recently, right? So Prasa, I guess the old Transnet or the old train company. So they've released quite a few pieces of land, and social housing is being developed in Cape Town as well as in Johannesburg, because they own quite a number of or large tracts of land across the country. So perhaps in your engagements, we don't want to only say that it is only local municipalities that can release land, but we must emphasize, and it's in the Social Housing Act and regulation, that if you are entering into a long-term lease, it must be with a public sector entity. Okay. If not, the SHRA will not give you money. I think that's the short of it. But importantly, when we speak about long-term leases, the social housing regulations also speak about a minimum of 30 years. In those negotiations, we would recommend at least 60 years and above, right? If you get 99, even better, because now the moment your lease agreement is 99, for the lenders, for the lenders, they don't even regard it as a lease anymore. They would then regard it as, equivalent to ownership, if I can use that word, right? And in Johannesburg, we've got a very good example with the waterfall between, just there by Midrand, where those pieces of land are owned or were sold on a long-term 99-year lease. And what that enabled is that now the banks say, 99, you are probably not going to live for 99 years, but there's an understanding that no, they then regard it as ownership. But in the details, it is a lease. Contractually, it's a lease, but from a financing perspective, they regard it as an ownership. And therefore, it is easier to source funding with a longer term lease. And it just looks good on your books, if I can be honest. It looks better anyway. But yeah, I mean, just to share some experiences, there's also a lot of disadvantages with a very short lease as well, as a developer. Because I guess the accountants will tell us that if you do a 30-year lease, you have to depreciate that lease over a period of time. And when you're depreciating, you are deducting on essentially the lease doesn't sit as an asset, if I can summarize it like that. So you want to negotiate a long-term lease. Be aware that be it's a lease or a full ownership, the SHRA will put a notarial deed, will register a notarial deed of restriction on the land or on the lease. What the notarial deed of restriction means is that it's sort of an endorsement on the title deed to restrict transfer, so that once I have the SHRA's money and I've built this thing, I don't usually say, okay, I'm gonna walk away, I'm gonna sell this thing to, I guess, another developer or my friend, and I'm gonna accrue the profits to myself. So I think very simply, the notarial deed of restriction prohibits a seller or a developer to sell the piece of land or the building, right? And we'll try and look for an example, but all it is probably about maybe a paragraph that the SHRA puts on every title deed or on every long-term lease. And the deeds registry then will always check that. I guess they will check every title before it's sold to see what the restrictions are. So I think in short, if you want to get in and get out in 5 years and say, no, I'm going to sell this thing, that is not the intention of the social housing program. Okay. You can sell, and there's a whole lot of terms and conditions around it, i.e. you can't sell to a private person, and this thing is lost from the public benefit. Okay. Cool. Let's see. I think we touched on this. We won't go into the details of the MFMA, but I think, what is worth emphasizing here once again is both, from a Municipal Finance Management Act as well as other legislation exist that govern how municipalities and other public sector entities can dispose of land. Can dispose of land and the requirements of it, right? It must be transparent, it must be competitive at the bottom, and it must follow supply chain processes. I think that's what we just want to emphasize. If not, you could find yourself wanting, and unfortunately, you won't be able to say, but I did not know. Yeah. Good. Yeah, let's spend just 2 minutes on this high level process. But how to read it would be, we're saying that, I'm a developer, how do I implement social housing? The first one is really on land identification, right? So you identify the site. Once you've identified that site, you then assess, or you want to determine whether that site is within a restructuring zone. We can't overemphasize that. Then if it is, depending on the land arrangements, you could sign a land availability agreement, or do a offer to purchase, however you do it. But most importantly, and even probably before, is about feasibility. Can the site work? As for social housing, is it financially feasible? Is it technically viable? But we'll go into a bit more details on that, I think sort of on another section as well, on how to do those assessments or what to consider. But I think what we're really trying to show here is that there are very clear steps colleagues that you follow in these processes. And if you follow them to the T, they always won't come at the same time or in chronological order, but just be aware that at some point I have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I might go 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 4, 2, 1. But what's important to note is there are very clear steps and guidelines on implementing social housing. Go. But I think what is just maybe worth emphasizing here would be once you've gone through sort of the land site feasibility site, you know, and you are getting to, I guess, the submission of a project to the SHRA, they've got very specific tools called the Quick Scan A, B, and C. Quick Scan A, colleagues that have applied to be a social housing institution will be familiar with. Your application form and requirements on registering as a social housing institution. So that's Quick Scan A, just be aware. Quick Scan B is technical viability on the site and your project. So the zoning, confirmation of zoning, letters of municipal support that we spoke about, letters of provincial support, sort of those technical and legal considerations for site. And then we speak about a quick scan C, which is the financial viability. So just think of it as a cash flow, right? So the SHRA requires you, and lenders as well will ask you for a cash flow to say, what is your construction costs? What is your operating cost? How much income will you be charging? And the books must balance. The maths must match before the SHRA will give you any money or a lender will give you any money. So that's just, I guess, high level things. But once again, just to emphasize, I think our objective is this is a high level introductory course. And the SHRA will, I think there's other programs that go into far more detail on Quick Scan B and C in particular, right? As well as Quick Scan A for registering as an SHI. But yeah, hey, you do all of that. There's some internal processes within the SHRA where your application goes through a number of stages or a number of committees. And these are checks and balances. But ultimately, where we want you to be is you signing a consolidated capital grant or a grant agreement and going into construction, right? It could be a clean virgin site where it's a greenfield. There's now I guess we're seeing a lot more brownfield projects. So projects where developers would buy old office blocks or would buy mostly old office blocks. Some guys are buying buildings from other private sector developers. So I think in Gauteng, the likes of FCO, City Property, or even listed companies where these companies are saying, no, we don't want to use this building anymore. We want to dispose it. So you can go to the SHRA and essentially buy the building to convert it as social housing. Time. Okay. Government agencies, we have touched on NHFC, the HDA, right. So the HDA being responsible for identifying and preparing land for the provision of housing. So historically, the HDA have worked a lot more on the other housing programs, but more recently, they're starting to look at land for social housing. And how it will happen is then they would identify it, they would do the pre-planning and release it on public tender to probably a potential SHI and OD. And that's what we are envisioning. But yeah, hey, we are all here because of the SHRA, and they are the regulator of the sector, and they regulate delivery agents, MOEs, SHIs, and ODAs. I'll just leave this for a few seconds. Okay, I must actually confirm, the slides are visible, I never asked. Can we see the slides? I guess nobody said we're not seeing the slides.
Yes, we can.
All right, Hendricks. Thank you. All right, good. All right, great. Any questions just as far from around the institutional arrangements and the roles of the different players? Is there one that we could have missed, or that just needs more emphasis or requires clarification? Yeah, sound like we're good. Yeah. So let's just spend just a few minutes on the Shra and just what the role of the Shra is. But equally important is what the role of the Shra is not, right? So the actual slides will speak to a lot of the roles of the Shra, but I think we'll try and speak to what they are not. But I think they are responsible for regulation, accreditation, compliance, and there's a whole unit dedicated to regulation of the sector within the Shra. They are responsible for investment, and there are two types of investment. We speak about a capital investment, so that's the 426,000 capital subsidy to build a unit. But they're also responsible for institutional investment. And when we refer to institutional investment, we're referring to the Shra investing in the sector, in its institution, and that is the department that John works for, sector development. So they would invest in training, like today. They would invest in in assisting developers with feasibilities, with accreditation, through the different grants that they have in the Shra. So it's not only about building units, but it's also about ensuring that the people that build the units and that manage the units have the capacity and capability and the tools to manage the social housing stock. I think people in the sector will know that or that have been sort of looking at the sector with that. There are a number of institutions that are under distress. So the sector and development and training unit will come in through institutional grants to try and assist them to get the necessary capacity and skills, right? And they also do public sector training. And as mentioned, this is geared at municipalities and province, so that the provinces and the municipalities are aware of their role within the social housing sphere. Next. Okay, good. Next, let's go. We won't touch too much on, I guess, some of the details of the Shra, but I think the 2 points that I just want to emphasize is that, if you want to see, I think from a disclosure perspective, it's shra.org.za. Some of the key things that maybe we don't say too often enough is that on the Shra, especially on the resources tab, let me see, I'll try and open it. There's a lot of information that is available that market participants should use, right? So if you want to know also what are the different SHIs across the country, and possibly how to contact them, the Shra also puts from a resource level, accredited or list of accredited social housing institutions. So do look out for that. Their reports will be there, some research as well. So let me see if I can just do a quick one, because the slide that I have really speaks to, let me zoom out, this part, right? So I just want to draw your attention to, it's shra.org.za, the resource center. And if you're on this page, you navigated, you navigated, if you look fine, sector development and training, their plans are there, annual performance plans. Quarterly report is a good resource and tool. If you want to see the performance of the sector, what the Shra is doing on a quarterly basis, they publish their reports there. I also want to direct you to research reports. So just maybe at a glance there, some socio-economic impact assessment, cost drivers in social housing, Western Affordable Housing Research. Okay, this I haven't seen before, but KZN Affordable Housing Market Summary. I think yesterday and a bit of this morning I touched on some reports being available that would assist you with maybe first level of sort of demand studies or assessment. So do look at the SHRA's website. Then we said as well, one of the, I guess, the instruments is the SHRA issues circulars or directives. You can also find these as well on the SHRA's website. And see quickly, there we go. Yeah, 2023. So the most recent one that is worth sort of just is, I guess, amendment. I think this is circular 2. And this speaks to the new grant quantum, but also for the colleagues that attended the other trainings. It also then speaks to the details on if you're an ODA. And I won't open it because fine. Yeah, there's a few steps on ODA that you have to do the 10% top up or the 20% equity top up. So just go to the website. The resources page is quite useful. Legislations and policies are there, and restructuring zones. Here's a list of all the restructuring zones on the SHRA's website that have been gazetted. Move that away. Yep. But yeah, I think from a functions perspective, you will find a list of I think different resources on the SHRA's website. Yeah. Colleagues, this is I guess a very busy slide. But I just want to emphasize the top part where we are saying that it's the SHRA's role is to accredit SHIs, is to invest in or to invest capital. Let me move that. To invest capital through projects accreditation, but also to invest in SHIs and potential SHIs, right? And they do this through the different grants, feasibility grants, sector development grants, etc. But also then an important function is once we have an SHI is then the SHRA regulates. So this is I guess a summary table. And there are certain compliance criteria that as an SHI you have to meet, how you are organized, organizational structure, financial viability. There's a lot of key performance indicators or regulatory indicators on vacancies, rent management, tenant practice, etc. So I think this slide just, summarizes some of the key instruments and key considerations or key roles within the SHRA. But we'll spend a bit more time in the next slides on regulation. But also here, just at the bottom as well, and this is in the other courses on project accreditation, where they'll spend a bit more time on project viability and readiness, as well as at the bottom left, project financial viability. So this section is covered a lot more in other courses from the SHRA. I just want to, asset preservation. But yeah, I think this is just a good summary of it. But to go back to the question around legal forms, and we'll cover that probably just after these slides. We'll then cover from an organizational accreditation perspective, the different legal forms that work within social housing, and some of the regulatory requirements on governance, property management, tenant management, and property development as well. We'll cover that. Good. Cool. Any questions, or is there anything that requires clarity? Maybe what I think a typical question that comes up a lot is the role of the SHRA in relation to my tenants, right? So where does the relationship lie between yourself as a delivery agent, the SHRA, and tenant, SHRA, and landlord? Does the SHRA have a role to play? If there's a tenant dispute, as an example, can you go to the SHRA and say, hey, my tenants are wanting to toy, They want free rental, or we are in dispute about electricity charges. Do we have anybody from an existing SHI that's in the training? That an existing, I mean, that is operating and managing stock. Just looking at different names here. No, eh? Nobody from an existing SHI today. Moloko, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have a tenant. I'll just get back to you now. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so that answers the question as well. There's a tenant in front of Moloko, so she's from an SHI. But yeah, all right. Let's just let her sign some leases there on customer service. All right, cool. But yeah, maybe I guess the responses is that at a lease agreement level, or when it comes to the tenant relationship, it's important that we emphasize that the relationship is governed by a lease agreement between the lessor and the lessee, with the delivery agent, the lessor, being the landlord, and the tenant itself. Nowhere in the lease agreement, at least the lease agreements that I've seen, I don't know if John and colleagues have seen otherwise, does it have the SHRA as a party, right? It has the SHI, ODA, MOE, and it has the beneficiary, the applicant. So the contractual relationship rests with those two entities, or with those two parties. So unfortunately, to be direct, you can't call on the SHRA and say, SHRA, my tenant does not want to pay rent. But the tenant, and they are likely to go to the SHRA and say to the SHRA, the tenant, my landlord is overcharging me. I'll pause there. Talente?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, great stuff. You mentioned that some of the SHIs have gone into distress. Have you guys done some research to understand what are the major reasons for those service providers to be in such a situation? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Talenta. Thanks. And we have, hey. And the we is twofold. So I work for an organization named NASHO, the National Association of Social Housing Organizations, and we are the representative body for the majority of delivery agents in the country. So over the years, and especially from around say about before COVID, about 2019, we did a series of sort of studies to understand the reasons. And the top three reasons, and we did some studies, and the SHRA also have internally as well done a lot of research as well, in understanding, why does this happen? So I think the first one is the first big reason that I think our studies have found is, I'm going to call it organizational governance, right? So at an organization level, where there is maladministration or irregularities, right? So what would then typically happen as the root cause is there is maladministration in the organization itself. And then when, I guess, either the tenants or the public become aware of it, they start, boycotting. So what I think from a process perspective, there's, call it funds are being misused. Then the consequence is that maintenance is not being upkept. And even to some extent, SHIs or delivery agents would be collecting recoveries like water, electricity, and are not paying municipalities. Then the municipality comes and locks, and or switches off, and then it just goes downhill from there. So there's definitely, I think as an industry and as developers, where the ownership or the reason rests with us. So our governance structures, our property management, institutional arrangements were not in order. So that's the first big reason. The second, and that would be an internal reason that results in these things, right? The other reason that we found is that it can be political, right? So there are external factors that results in SHIs and ODAs not being financially viable, or where there's a rental boycott. So historically, around either national or mostly local election, we find a lot of misinformation where councillors would, I guess, misinform tenants and say, you are going to own this thing, it is yours, or we vote for us, we win, we'll make sure you own it. So the other reason, the big reason is external factors where there's a lot of misinformation, and it can be at mostly at local level. And then we advise, for instance, while your local municipality and local councillors are a key stakeholder in social housing, you need to manage those relationships very carefully, especially around elections. So, councillors or potential councillors or political parties could come and say, hey, we want to canvass for voters in your project. Please, can we have a slot? And you want to be very careful around such things because they have resulted in SHIs going sort of not bust, but some bust, but rental boycott, because you allow the DA, you must allow EFF, you must allow PA, then it just gets messy very quickly. So that would be an external factor that results in it. And the last one, both internal and external, was around COVID. So you'll recall when we went into COVID, landlords could not evict tenants. And that issue stayed with the sector for even beyond COVID, because we couldn't evict, and we had a government program. People started taking advantage and saying, no, we're not going to pay because you're not going to evict me. I think for that sort of directive to be retracted, post-COVID took a while, and now SHIs and ODAs were not receiving rent. After not receiving rent, they must now start eviction processes, which takes another 18 months of also not receiving rent. So that was also a very big, one of the bigger reasons as well. But I think all of those, I think we've seen a lot of, if not, SHIs recover over the last sort of 1.5 year. And maybe what we should also say, that the positive, or to encourage, is when you're thinking about your organization, the SHIs that we're seeing in the research that are recovering is SHIs that had multiple projects. So you don't only have one big project or one small project, because if that project there's a rental boycott or intended hijack, then you are stuck, right? So you want to diversify. And you can do that, at multiple projects. You can do it at a provincial level, have some stuff in the inner city, have some stock in the suburbs, just to diversify. So we saw the entities that managed to recover after the rental boycott are entities where had a bit more stock in various areas. And while they were not able to receive rent on one particular project, they still managed to get rent on other projects. Hope that helps. I'm just trying to think, and I'm just making a note. But on some of the research is also publicly available. I think on our website as National, we put it up there. So I must just check that we've put the recent ones. But yeah, it's something that we track very well, and the SHRA as well is actively and proactively supporting SHIs so that they don't find themselves in those situations. Let me see, I'm just looking in order. Pamela, then back to you, Talent.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this workshop. It's actually quite informative and it's helping. I think my question comes from your explanation of Sister Lita's question, which is, I hear that, with some of the failed projects, the SHIs are to blame, and some, obviously, it's COVID and all of that. I think my question is, you said that those that have survived are those with obviously multiple projects. But with somebody that is starting out, what kind of due diligence would a person that is starting out would have to do, and what would be the remedy that SHRA would assist me with? Because obviously the project is to enrich the community, and it failing meaning it doesn't do what it's meant to do. So what are the recourses in terms of that? Thank you.
Cool. Clear course. Okay, note. Talenta, you had a hand as well. Maybe I can take that.
All right, no, thanks, Karabelo. My question was around the costings. Obviously, before you start your project, you have to do your thorough costings to make sure that you cost each unit properly. So what happens in a case where, because I don't think you really can be 100%, what happens in a case where maybe there are natural, disasters, like your materials get washed away and there are prolonged rains and, your cost, and your project, comes to a halt during the time. Is there some form of rearrangement that happens during the time? Thank you.
All right, pleasure. And I'm gonna maybe answer that one first, and then we'll speak to it possibly in the next slides. I'd like to say you must take insurance. That's the purpose of insurance. But I think the details is I think there's a few ways. And I've made a note, Talent, when we cover the section on projects, then I'll respond in detail. But there are some checks and balances that we can give tips on from a costing perspective. Just to go back to, it makes sense for, call it, larger organization, because they are spread and they can spread the risk. But how do I say it? So I think our advice on sort of small startup would be, key. I think the first one, especially from the external, because let's say the internal risk you can manage, right? So you have your processes in place, your governance structure is in place. But what about external factors, like counselors trying to come in, or misinformation? For me, I think that is one of the bigger risks, because that is the risk that you are not in control of, right? So in your organization and within your staff, it might be HSVs or other front-facing staff, you want to put processes in place so that you are managing some of these potential risks. And it becomes a bit tricky, right? Because you want to have a relationship with your local municipality as well as your local community through what? Through the local councillor. But you must also know that councillors change. But you also need to manage that relationship where the councillor must not overstep, right? So you don't want any political activities to be happening in your building. So for me, that would be sort of a no-no. So I think from an internal policy perspective, you must be clear. And it is something that you are constantly doing, right? Another important thing, while a factor that I would maybe advise, is even tenant education. So you have tenants and they are in your building. It's obviously difficult for you to educate tenants that are, or potential, or the community that are outside, but constant tenant education on the social housing program is important. So a lot of the different SHIs will do tenant education before somebody moves in. They would do tenant education when you move, when you move in, and this would be, it takes different forms. They'll give you a guide as a tenant. They would have a structured tenant education on a Saturday or an afternoon, so that the tenants are clear, this is a rental program, because that's the other big risk as well around the program being misconstrued, around ownership. So you constantly have to be repeating the message. I think I acknowledge that you do find people that are hard-headed and that would have a different motive. But you also then, those will be exceptions, and you have to deal with them as quickly as possible. In as far as your policies and procedures, and as well as making use of I'm going to say the rental tribunal as an example. So I think it's kind of difficult to say these are some of the due diligence stuff, but it really is a process and governance component where you want to put the right processes in place. Um, John, if you're still in the call, I don't know if you sort of have any thoughts, or maybe somebody else from an SHI around, how do you as an SHI gear yourself up or manage some of the potential risks that the rental boycott, and what can you do as a startup?
Mm. In fact, that's a good question, Carabello. I mean, one of the things that we've seen is an SHI or social housing institution that has presence at the project has a better chance of managing these things upfront and being proactive about it, versus establishing your head office somewhere and not having a building manager on site. I mean, best practice has sort of given us that intelligence to say you need to at least have one or two building managers. We call them housing supervisors in the sector, or could also be called building managers, who literally knows every tenant that stays in that complex. And they are your ears and eyes on the ground on day-to-day basis. It works. It works miraculously because it also feeds into your intelligence at the head office, as well as to something is brewing here, and therefore you are able to cull it before it gets out of hand. So I think that is it. And I would not overemphasize the tenant education. Providing those platforms, whether it be through block meetings or focus groups, use an opportunity as you manage the tenancies to actually also impart some awareness about the program. Because over time, what you also see starting to trickle in is that, and a few of the projects that have actually fallen into distress has always also been around people saying, no, we've been paying rent for the last 5 years. This should now be under our ownership, should be handed over for ownership. And that has always, I mean, something like that, I think for more of our older projects with that historical, that's also been one of the reasons. So I think having presence on the ground, but also having continuous, it doesn't stop when the tenant moves in terms of tenant education, but during their stay, there must be that continuous interactions, and also have, I mean, and this I've spoken at length in the client service and tenant management training, have a complaints management system. These are avenues that helps people to ventilate issues, and let it also be a credible one that says, when John has lodged in a complaint about a leaking geyser or a best geyser, there is a quick turnaround and response to it. Because if things are not responded to, that also kind of triggers people to mobilize, and that leads you to that record. So it's just a number of things, but I think a chief amongst would be also having that presence on the ground.
No, I agree, John, and I think thanks for picking that up, especially housing supervisors, because I've observed in I guess some of the the entities that we interact with, there's a growing trend of housing supervisors not being there present 24 hours. We're not saying they must work 24 hours, but the role of the housing supervisor, in managing the building relationships, being your hawks within the building, cannot be understated, because nothing should happen, without the housing supervisor knowing and alerting management. I'm trying to think as well, maybe just to share. I know one SHI because what you also find, what one of the reasons is broadly what leads to these things is broad unhappiness, right? By the tenant community, where you are not attending to maintenance, say, or whatever, or you say you are attending and it's not clear when it'll be done. And with some like, let's say if you need to put in a lift might take 6-9 months in between it being procured and being installed. But if there's no transparency or communication around some of those things, you'll find yourself wanting. So yeah, I think clear communication regularly, tenant engagement as a theme, but also just going there and sometimes just putting yourself as an entity to your community to say that, hey guys, we are here to also hear how we can improve. This is what we are doing. This is what we plan on doing. Also just helps, and it also provides an opportunity that you can know what's going on in your projects.
Yeah, thank you both so much. I mean, it makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah, it's just that with the supervisor as well, do they need to be like a paid employee to do this, or is it a volunteer type of basis? Because like you're saying that there's those issues where we've been paying rent for 5 years, this should be ours. I feel like that sense of entitlement is broad in the sense that there might be a bit of entitlement with the supervisor as well. It's like, oh, but I'm looking after your building, then why must I pay rent? Those kind of things. So just how to mitigate those kind of things. I think that is why I'm asking, because obviously as a startup, for you to have the multiple buildings, you need to start somewhere. And if those are the issues that we face when we start, I mean, I wouldn't want them discouraging us from,
Yes.
continuing with the project.
Yeah. Yeah, basic conditions of employment says we must pay people for services rendered. So yes, it is a paid job, without a doubt, and it's an important job, so much so that you want to pay, right? That person or individual. But you can rest assured that how the program works is when you are structuring your business plan or your project feasibility, what one of the items or component, they would be called head office costs or building costs. So by the time your project has been approved, you would have said, I'm going to pay my housing supervisor 7,000, and it's already in there. Then you are viable and you pay that housing supervisor. There's ways to incentivize as well, just to manage budget there. And you say, okay, sharp. In the institution I sort of operated in, we knew that we will never have 100% occupied building. It's almost impossible. We aim for it. We'll have some sort of vacancy, but then you can technically then allocate a unit, 2 bedroom, 1 bedroom, depending on whether that housing supervisor has a family, and then they actually occupy that building, call it rent free, right? It's one of the, I guess, some of the incentives, because then you say, okay, sharp, I don't have 15,000 rent to pay, but I can pay 7.5, and then you get a free accommodation as part of it. You must pay for your own utilities, but I'll provide you as an employer with free accommodation. So there's little different tactics you can exploit.
Thank you both so much.
Perfect. I must also emphasize, or it's worth an emphasis, that while we acknowledge and we speak about rental boycotts, it is only a sub-segment of I guess the program. So please, just to emphasize, don't be discouraged. If you if you plan your project well, you put the processes in place, your biggest risk will just be the exogenous stuff around local communities, councillors, but I think there's enough experience in the sector now for us to share those ideas. Cool. All right, let's see, what are we gonna, the next section actually links nicely to, I guess, what we spoke about from a boycott perspective and the checks and balances, right? So accreditation and compliance. Okay. So I just want to emphasize, and then John also spoke to it. I think the slide we put some of the next trainings from the SHRA, right? So while this is introduction to social housing, SHI accreditation and setup, which goes into a lot more detail on the legal forms, the consideration, how to apply, the requirements of how to set up as an SHI. So that next training is the 3 to the 4th of December, 2024. So that would be, I guess, the ideally if you found this of value and you are now considering becoming an SHI and need more information, I think I would urge you to attend this training. It'll be in about 2 weeks' time, 2-3 weeks' time. Then yeah, I think the others, some of these have happened, but I just wanted to emphasize that for the purpose of today, we'll do some light touch, but the big touch on SHI accreditation will be in November, I mean in December virtually. Okay. But also John mentioned that for next year in yesterday's training, that next year they are planning to do the project packaging training, I guess both for SHIs and ODAs, which is then I guess the next level. So do look out and register for those trainings. Cool. So accreditation and approach and processes, right? So I think here, sorry, one step. I think what's important is, we want to emphasize that if you want to be an SHI, you must go through an application process, or if you want to submit your project as well, it'll go through a verification. The SHRA does some low-level assessment, but there's an external assessment as well to ensure that, you as an entity, pass or meet all the requirements. Once you are awarded, there's an award. It'll say you are conditionally accredited as an SHI. And now the SHRA have also introduced a period to say once you are awarded, you cannot be an SHI into perpetuity. You need to bring a project, and I'll double check, I think within 3 years of accreditation as an SHI, but I'll double check that number. Otherwise, your accreditation lapses. And the reason for this is also to, I guess, manage both expectation from applicants, but also on the SHRA side, so that they don't have a list of 100 accredited institutions, but only 10 that are working. So just be aware that once you register as an SHI, they give you a small, a specific amount of time to bring in a project that must be registered, and it might even be shorter than 3 years. I'll double check. Go ahead, Lemcha.
I just wanted to find out in terms of application wise, if you want to apply to be an ODI, it's still the same process. That's the first thing. And the second thing, if you want to present a project for pipeline, is it a different stream? Or do I first have to get through the accreditation, ODI, and then bring in a project thereafter? Thank you.
That's clear. So it's a good question. To go back, so if you look at I don't think we have it here, but let's say there are primarily 2 streams, right? Just for everybody's benefit, of delivery agents. So SHI, and you also have an ODA, and that stands for other delivery agent. Practically and through the regulations, the SHIs must first be accredited, which is the process that we are speaking about. So there's a very sort of clear process to say, step 1, register as an SHI. Once you are awarded, then you bring a project. It has to be in that form. But as an other delivery agent, the process is slightly different in that, and we actually accredit the ODA and the project at the same time, we being the SHRA. So the difference in the process there is that you don't first have to receive your accreditation certificate as an ODA, but you actually say, I'm an ODA, and this is my project, and you then submit to the SHRA. I'm going to call it 2 application forms at the same time, or 2 submissions. for your project to be on the pipeline, as well as for you as a other delivery agent to be accredited for that project. I just want to check if that's clear, Lamkhan, and everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
All right, perfect. And for the benefit of the other colleagues, you spoke about a pipeline. So by pipeline, we mean the SHRA keeps a roster or a register of potential projects or possible projects that will, I guess, future social housing projects. Yeah, and then it's one of the steps is before, I guess, you ultimately get the consolidated capital grant, you register as a you register on the pipeline, if I can put it that way. Thanks, Linda. Yeah. But I think what some of the questions that came up from an accreditation perspective is, the legal form. The not-for-profit as a legal form is very popular for SHIs. And this is an accreditation criteria, right? So firstly, when you are submitting your accreditation, they would check your legal form. Are you a PTY, an NPO? We'll get into the details. Are you not-for-profit? What is your governance structure? You want good governance for an entity. Are you financially viable? And part of the submission is a business plan. You will say, I want to do project 1, 2, and 3. Project 1 is 100 units. Project 2 is 300. Project 3 is 500. And this is high level what I guess my organizational viability would look like. And then colleagues, there's templates for this that the SHRA makes available and the training for SHI accreditation. So some templates are provided. Then effective tenant management. Do you have the right policies and procedures to be accredited, right? So you would submit your tenant management policies, your property management policies and your property development policies as well. And there's a lot of, I guess, detailed sort of step criteria which are in the next in the other training on what are the requirements in property development, what are the requirements for efficient property management, tenant management, and the other criteria. So all of that is touched a lot more in other details, but maybe as well to assist that what the SHRA introduced in their new policy about 2 years ago is to say that you don't necessarily have to give us everything at the same time. They also then are making it a bit easier because they are recognizing that, yes, I want to be an SHI, but I'm still in a process of development. I'm still in the process of identifying my project, making it viable and submitting. So, I don't have tenants as yet. So I don't therefore have to give a tenant management policy. So there's some lenience in the number of documents that you have to submit initially. And once again, this is covered in detail in the next training. Okay, cool. John, I see there's also just noting a request if as part of this we can make some of those templates or packs available. I guess we'll be led by you on that one. Or maybe we must say you must come to the training in 2 weeks' time. But check, the stuff is there, guys. It really is. I don't know if it's made available on our website, but it's there as part of the training pack. Yeah, monitoring. Yeah, so remember now, just from a compliance and monitoring perspective, the SHRA is able, or let's say, let me go a step back. So there is a certain checks and balances within the social housing regulations, so that that enables the SHRA to monitor an SHI or ODA's compliance. The first one is around quarterly reporting. So on a quarterly basis, SHIs, ODAs must submit a report that shows essentially their financial wellness, how much they are collecting, what is the arrears, what is the occupancy rate, the vacancy rate, and there's a whole lot of KPIs that the SHRA monitors on a quarterly basis. And through these KPIs, then they can see, is this entity, call it in the green, is it in amber, or is it in red? And once it is in the red, and that links to an earlier question, or when it's in amber, then the SHRA, through their compliance unit, as well as the sector development and training, they would engage that SHI and say, hey, SHI, Mofokeng, we see you are not collecting well. Is this a once-off issue, or is it a structural? How can we assist you through remedial action grants? Because the question was asked that, yeah, like what happens if I'm in trouble? And what does happen is the compliance unit will engage with you. And if your entity requires, call it other technical or additional support, or could be consultants to help you with occupancy or tenant engagement, it could be consultants that assist you with a turnaround plan, so that those checks and balances are there to assist. Okay. So, but also then there's, you submit annual returns, they would do inspections. Now recently they've introduced, permission to change documents. So if your CIPC documents are changing, you need to inform the SHRA and request, consent. But also linked to rental boycotts and the state of units. The SHRA then implements building condition audits periodically every 3 years. So every 3-year cycle, the SHRA or its consultants must go and visit a building to check whether the maintenance is in order, you have a long-term maintenance plan, are you adhering to OSH, occupational health and safety, and they also then would do tenant satisfaction surveys as well. So these are the sort of things that would inform the SHRA and yourselves. I guess you should know by then, and here's a problem, the tenants are not happy, they're disgruntled. But you also, as an SHI MOE or ODA, should not necessarily just wait, right? You should be doing your own building condition assessment. That very same housing supervisor that we spoke about on a monthly basis should be walking the building and saying, or no, fascia boards are falling, or I've got a leaking tap here. It should form part of their key performance indicators or their job profile that they must do some sort of audit. Equally, they must also audit internal units as well. Hey, let's say you have a building of 300-400 units. Make sure that those housing supervisors are regularly going into units to inspect, and so that you know the conditions, and that must then inform your financial planning to say, no, this is my budget for long-term maintenance. And yeah, I think I also spoke about a strategic business plan approval, where you're saying this is, I think, the next 3 to 5 years. This is what I'm planning from an SHI application perspective, or when I will be an SHI. So I think that links in with financial, viability as well. Is that clear, guys? Does that make sense? I know I'm summarizing here and there. Thumbs up, thumbs down, midway. Thank you. Great stuff. So yeah, we spoke about what happens. What if I'm non-compliant, right? Thanks Musa. As an SHI, what can the SHRA do? What would you like them to do? Is also interesting, because what we like and what they do, there's always a mismatch of expectations. But we'll speak to what they can do. Let's get that right. Where's this? Okay. So remedial action is step 1. So remedial action, referring to they would give an SHI a notice to say, hey, SHI POE, you have not met the following KPIs. Here's a compliance notice. But also B, what is your remedial plan, right? So you would say, no, I plan on fixing the lift within the next month, and you would agree a remedial action. Secondly, if this does not work and the project goes further downhill, there's a rental boycott, you are not collecting rent, the SHRA, through their regulations, can put you under administration. Under administration, I'm just trying to think, it's a typical I guess, legal processes. I'm just trying to think. NESFASI currently now is under administration because the board and I guess, yeah, the board and yeah, like just did not have control of it, or the minister was unhappy about the performance of NESFASI, and they've put it under administration, where now a third independent party comes and administers the daily affairs, right? So this would be a legal court process where the SHRA files and goes to High Court, and then they become the administrator. Thirdly is removal of accreditation. Accreditation is not guaranteed, it's not forever. The SHRA also has the powers to remove accreditation. And lastly is disposal or transfer of stock. So if all of these, step 1, 2, 3, have failed, the last option is disposal or transfer. Okay. Let's talk about this practically. So practically, there's a few SHIs or delivery agents that have gone through remedial action. But equally, when that fails, and I'm trying to think, in Mpumalanga, there's been delivery agents that are under administration and there's not that many, so I mustn't make it sound like it's a lot. There's SHIs in Mpumalanga, in the Free State, that have been under administration or are currently under administration. And so this is real. Hey, I just want to emphasize this happens. It's not theoretical. Then removal of accreditation happens in a number of ways. So I think, yeah, this is an ongoing thing where the compliance unit will be looking on if SHIs are compliant, are submitting the required documentation, and they then remove their accreditation if they're not. Disposal or transfer stock. This is something that we might see late this year or next year. So I think if you want to operate in the space, do look out. There is a regulation or rule that says that stock can only transfer, or social housing stock must be transferred to another social housing institution. So the SHRA might decide in their discretion to say, the project in the Free State, has been under administration for a while. We've evicted the illegal occupants, and we have regularized some of the right ones. And now we want to transfer this to another SHI or sell it to another SHI. So therefore, they will go on a request for proposal. So if they do, look out for it. They'll obviously then, if you're already an existing SHI, they would send that RFP to all existing SHIs and ODAs, and you would sort of publicly bid for it or submit a proposal. Free State, okay. Just to repeat on Free State, so there we've got an SHI in the Free State that is currently under administration. The name is Freshco. Freshco, I don't think they have a website, but yeah, so there's an entity that's an SHI that's been under administration for a few years by the SHRA. Yeah, that's what I was saying. So I guess if is a possibility, and it is one of the few possibilities that is available to the SHRA, would be that, if the entity cannot be resuscitated, I was just emphasizing the SHRA has a discretion to dispose or transfer that stock to another registered SHI or registered ODA. Okay, let's see. I think, yeah, maybe it's now 11 o'clock. Can I suggest we take a 10 minutes comfort break and come back at 10 past 11? Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay, let's do that. Please, yeah, get your coffees, reply to email Linyana, or make some phone calls, and let's start at promptly at 10 past 11. And yeah, if I guess during the break there are questions in Put them in the chat. The other colleagues as well will respond. It is now slightly 11:11. So hope everybody is back. Let's think quickly. I guess I'm just noting the requests for the presentation. Assuming that colleagues and attendees registered on the Shraz link. So all details that we have there, the presentation will be sent. But Paul, if I can also ask what we also had in addition, and let me see if I can find it, was just a Google form link. And I'm gonna just put a form. If you hadn't completed it yesterday, if we can ask that you just complete this as well, because I guess we know sometimes the links are shared, to what is it? Do we have an email actually on this thing? Let me just make sure. Sorry, I just wanted to check whether this form has a link. Let me just do 1 second. Mpho?
Hi, Carabello.
On our Google form, do we have email address?
For us, we don't have.
We don't. Okay. May I ask, just so that we assist John, if you can add an email address on the form, then just so that if there are attendees that hadn't registered on John's link that are in the meeting and want the and want the presentations and the pack, then then John will just get an Excel spreadsheet. He doesn't have to go through the chats one by one.
Okay. Let me just update it. I'll send the updated one.
We'll resend it. All right, cool. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
All right. Okay, cool. Maybe colleagues, let's do that. Just maybe over and above, but we'll update the link. Then if you can just put your email address there as well, and particularly if just so that I guess John will then cross-reference between his list and any additional emails that we get in the registration form. Good. Comfort break. Okay, let's get this done. Getting to the next slide. Let me just check. Rishuba Trading, you are flashing there. Do you want to say something or okay, get background? Okay, all right, we'll move. All right, let me share. If you complete for me. Oh, shame. A good clarity question is, yeah, if you don't mind, please complete the form again because we didn't have your contact details or your email address. But alternatively, if you had registered with John, then there shouldn't be a need. I think it's those, especially for attendees that might have received the link to the training secondary. So John might not have their direct contact details. But maybe for simplicity, if you do complete it, it's not a train smash. And just to confirm, let me actually just delete the link. Paul will just reissue the link as well with the extra line item for for email addresses. Right. Let's see. 11:15. All right. Let's see. We can push 1 more hour. I'll in the right second. Okay, cool. Compliance. So we're speaking about compliance. What is the STRA? Okay, cool. I think we've covered this. So we've covered before the break, remedial action, administration, removal of accreditation, and disposal and transfer of stock. I think we gave a bit of a tip to say that look out, there might be assets that are being disposed or transferred, but you would have to be an SHI, I'm sure, or a sort of an ODA with some sort of a track record. But I think just look out for that. So colleagues, what we've spoken about, I guess yesterday was a lot of the legislations, today institutional arrangements, who are the stakeholders. We are touching a bit now on, we've touched lightly on how to register as an SHI. But I think what we want to emphasize now, I think the last part of the day is I think two sections primarily on what we call the business of social housing. And by the business, we mean the real nitty-gritties, right? So the real details on how to structure yourself. There was a question on legal form and entity, so we'll cover that, how to consider that, property management, property development. They're like the real stuff. So please, if you have a particular question because you are trying to get accredited or you want to do a project, let's make this part as practical as possible. It'll just help us go through it just efficiently. Just to also note, Paul has just put in another form. But colleagues, if you can just complete that as attendees, and just put your email as well, just so that we are able to send you the pack. Just to emphasize, if you don't mind, please just complete it, even if you completed it yesterday. Thanks, Paul. Okay. Maraniki, you said you must complete the forms and Tabile. But yeah, just I think because we just worried that if it's in the chat, then once we get out of the meeting, it's a bit of additional admin for us or for John to look at all the individual sort of messages rather than if it's on the Google form, then he'll be able to download it. So if you can do that, please. Okay, cool. So I'll continue, and everybody can see my screen. Thumbs up. Thank you. All right, perfect. Okay, so the next section is on establishing a social housing business, right? We spoke about the different legal forms. It must be financially viable. And you must have a project pipeline for delivery. So don't just want to do one project. You must aim to do 3 projects or 4 projects because it enables you to be both financially viable, but also it is a sort of a de-risking measure, right? You are then diversifying your entity or your business from local risks or specific risks. So it is a requirement to then say, okay, in my project, this is my pipeline. This is why I want to do social housing. I just don't want to do one project. I want to be a property social housing mogul in my province or in the country. Okay, so let's speak about the legal form, right? There was a very clear and direct question on Rishumba, is that I thought there was a hand earlier on to say you can see the presentation, or did you have a question? Okay, so I'll proceed. Let me see quickly if I can put that hand down. No. So the first one is you can register as a company limited by shares. So what we call other delivery agents or ODAs, right? And these are PTY entities. So, I guess in Gauteng, Johannesburg, we've got quite a few general property developers, guys like Baldwin, who's a big property developer, RBA, Cosmo Housing. So think of it as those kind of entities that are already in property build environment, and they then say, okay, we want to now go into social. So this other delivery agent legal form is primarily geared towards them. But to also be transparent, we also have a lot of emerging new developers that are not sort of the big names that are preferring the ODA model. But what you must consider very clearly is that if you're an ODA, the SHRA requires you to have a 20% equity, right? In order to get project accreditation. So sometimes that can be a limiting factor, but it is something that you should be very clearly aware of. The slides are going the wrong way. Okay. Secondly, it's about a non-profit. You can also do the legal form of non-profit and then the New Companies Act. Historically, we had Section 21 companies as non-profits, but I think now this has, it's not a preferred legal form that is used. And the Social Housing Act also allows for cooperatives to operate in the social housing sector. We haven't seen a cooperative in a very, very long time because it was very difficult for, I guess, our South African market to understand cooperative as a legal form for delivery of social housing. If I'm very honest, how, internationally you find in Canada, particularly Canada and other regions where social housing is delivered through a cooperative type arrangement. So let's say how many are we in this meeting? The 30 odd of us would come together, establish a cooperative, and essentially go to the SHRA and apply for grant funding to develop social housing. I think the history and the history of I guess the social housing institutions that were cooperative is unfortunately they failed because of misunderstanding of the program. Then somebody then thinks this is something that they own, etc., etc. But to be clear, it is legally possible and it is legally permissible to be a cooperative in the social housing sector. I don't know if the SHRA will still approve it, but it is possible. Okay. What is maybe also worth sharing and linking to the next question is for you to be an SHI, you also don't have to be a non-profit only, right? So you can register an SHI as a PTY. So there's no restriction there. Where the challenge then comes in, and it'll be clearer on the next slide, is around tax compliance. And I'll speak a bit more to that. But I just want to be clear that there is no regulation that says an SHI must only be a non-profit organization. It can be a PTY, it can be a cooperative, a Section 21 company, etc. So that's what that means. I guess these were the historically most popular legal forms. The other legal forms that are allowed within the Act and regulations, which are not used and we don't see, is a short block company, is a communal property association, and a voluntary association. But I think for the purposes of today and gearing up for success, we would just say focus on the top four. The bottom three at the bottom are not used, and and how these things, if I'm also honest and practical about it, is the more people you have in your stock file, the more likely you are for the stock file to fail and not buy grocery at December. So if it's a legal structure or a legal form that is clear with good governance, with a founding chairperson who becomes a CEO later, then it's manageable. But the moment you have cooperatives and you have different, either in a lot of more different individuals with a stake or a say, it gets complicated very quickly. So what to consider, right? So yes, I want to do social housing, but I'm debating between being an SHI and being an ODA. So the first thing is you must think about your product offering. And the other one I want to emphasize is also about raising finance, right? So how do these two things, or how do these two considerations impact or influence your thinking? On product offering, think about, are you going to do social housing only? Are you going to do residential and commercial? Are you going to do other residential products? It could be the affordable market, it could be the luxury market, or anything else. I think that's call it theme number one. Then on theme number two for consideration on raising finance, your legal form impacts your ability to raise finance. I think it can't be less clear, I hope. Yesterday, I made the example that about 2 years ago, the NEF used to fund social housing or funded. So let me say I'm aware of about 2 projects that were funded by the NEF. But the NEF were also very clear and transparent to say that we will fund social housing, but it has to be an ODA. They were not prepared to fund SHIs or non-profit organizations. So in thinking about your legal form, be aware that it will impact your ability to raise finance. There's pros and cons for both, but generally the banks and other DFIs that don't know the sector well would prefer an ODA because with an ODA, there are directors that would be liable, right? But just to emphasize, as an NPC, there's no shares. You can attract donation and government grants if you are good. John spoke about some grants as well within the social housing space or the SHRA that are only available to SHIs and not ODAs. That to be practical. When we speak about PTYs, ODAs, your ability to raise share capital and equity, right? So we've seen ODAs in the sector that have raised equity by partnering with other individuals. So let me be practical. I've got an ODA and my total development costs, let's make it simple, is 1 million. The SHRA is giving me 700,000 rand, but I'm short by 300, right? So what do I do to get that 300? I can sell shares, essentially, right? I can make shares available or equity or bring in additional equity. So I can go to, I don't know, Lerato and say, Lerato, don't you want to contribute equity into this transaction? I've got I've got SHRA approval, I've got this thing. It's going to make, I don't know, it's viable, but we need equity. So when you speak about equity, we're not saying that it has to be your equity. That's quite an important distinction. So there's no expectation that you as the as the director, the equity is 100% yours. So you can bring in other partners, and this is common. We've got different entities that have done this in different ways. Interestingly, the sort of the savvy guys that are ODAs are also able to raise debt as a form of equity. So there are banks that will give you, let's say, that would do equity funding, I think they call it. So they would say, okay, Mr. Bank, instead of giving me a loan funding, give me equity funding, and they come in with equity. So those are some of the considerations. Cooperative, high risk stuff, right? I think in the next slide, I'll speak to a bit more detail on the product offering around considering and the tax implication if you're gonna go social housing only, commercial or resi. Colleagues, is this slide clear? Because I think it's an important baseline in some of the thinking, for the entrepreneurs that are thinking about social housing.
Karabelo, for some odd reason, I think maybe I'm the only one that can't see the slide. Maybe it's because I changed from my laptop to the phone. Let me try and.
All right. For you, I'll even stop and reshare.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I've stopped the share and I've reshared it again.
Perfect. I can see it now. Thank you.
All right. There was a glitch in the matrix there. So I'll go a step back. I just want to find it. Okay. Just a step back. We spoke about product offering and raising finance as key consideration of your legal form in deciding whether you want to be an SHI or MOE. But over and above that, I think the point number 3 in consideration is income tax. Ne? There is a way, or the law, the Income Tax Act, given that the nature of social housing as a program, you can apply to SARS to be exempted from paying income tax. So you do this through a process called, I don't know what the process is called, but essentially if you apply to SARS to be a public benefit organization, it allows you to have income tax exemption. Why this is important is that you therefore do not have to pay income tax on the rentals that you receive or on your net profit as an SHI. If you're an ODA, or let me, and we're actually doing some work around this. At the moment, there are no ODAs that we are aware of that have public benefit organization status. But I guess I would implore you and say, if you are thinking about it, rather get, call it tax advice, because when we read with sort of my high school method, with my high school, high school accounting, the rules on the on SARS are not specific or restrictive to say that a PBO can only be an NPO. So PBO status is not a function of your legal form, but it's a function of your activities that you are doing. By activities, I mean, public benefit activities. There are a few activities in the Act. The one is where we fall in, land and housing. The other one is welfare. The other one is education. So if you are sort of in the education space, you can register as a public benefit organization. If you are running NGOs and in the welfare space, you can register as a PBO, and that allows you tax exemption. Then it also allows you to issue those sort of certificates for people to claim their tax back. But I think this is important, colleagues, that you think about it. So an ODA currently would be paying income tax because of there not being a PBO status. Another one is value-added tax, VAT. Very briefly, residential income. So as an SHI ODA, you would issue monthly invoices for rent. Rent is not subject to VAT. Therefore, so or let me say a high proportion of your income would not be subject to VAT. Therefore, you can register for VAT, right? But there's, I guess, in the training on property, in project accreditation, they spend a lot more time on restructuring your company or companies so that you benefit from the VAT or for the zero-rated VAT during construction. So there's two components in considering VAT. There's VAT when you are operating, and to be very clear, if you are collecting residential rental income, you can't register for VAT. But when you are construction, you are paying, and the accountant will help us, you are paying VAT in your supplies, right? So you are buying building material, you are buying cement, you are paying your developer, and you are paying VAT. But if you do your structures well, you can structure yourself that while my SHI is not registered for VAT, therefore can't claim VAT input-output, but my construction company or my construction SHI, if I can call it that, or my developer partner will be able to claim the VAT that we paid on building material, on the construction developer, etc. But this particular component is discussed in a lot more detail in the ODA and SHI product accreditation. But just for now, I think be aware that you can structure yourself at construction level to be able to claim that VAT. And you must think about it. This is big money that we're talking about. So let's say, sorry, I'm gonna just look for a calculator quickly. So let's say you are doing a project of, I don't know, 100 million. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 100 million. 100 million? Is that a lot of money? Okay, let's do it the other way around. So let's say you are doing one project or one unit is 500,000. Yeah. We're a small startup. This is the unit cost per unit, per project. Then you say 500,000, and let's say we are doing 150 units. Yeah? 75 million, right? So the possible VAT claim maximum, and it'll be subject to, I guess, your tax guy at 0.15, 15%. That's a whole 11 million in potential maximum VAT that you can claim from SARS. So this really goes a long way in assisting developers to be more financially viable in their project, because you would then go to SARS and say, hey, I paid out all these invoices and they were VATable, and I'm claiming it back, and then must go back into the project. So that amount of money is not for us to, I guess, spend and splurge on, but it must go back into the project. Cool. Yeah, then the fourth consideration is really on social entrepreneurship. Why are you doing this, right? Are you doing this because you want to be a entrepreneur, with a social entrepreneur, or are you doing this because when you are a capitalist, you want to build, you want to be a big developer? Socialism died with USSR and such. So that's another consideration. And then there's this, it's a personal decision that you make. We're not in any way saying that as a social entrepreneur, you must be prepared to lose money. But we're saying that the motivations could be very different, right? I think social housing is not for loss. It is a business for profit, but the profits cannot be distributed out as dividends. That's the important part. Those profits must be reinvested within the organization, within your staff, so that you are growing as a business. Cool. Maybe to check, I know earlier on the questions around legal form more came up. Is it clear? I think I can't remember if it was you, Talente, or somebody else who asked about, what should I consider? But guys, yeah, just to check if the thanks for telephone. Yeah, this next few slides, we'll just move through them very quickly. But really it's some of the key, I think a few slides before we said there are certain qualification or consideration criterias for you to apply. One of them is being, I guess, your legal form. The second one is your governance structure. Do you have board of directors? Who constitute your board of directors? In some of the detail, if we can give some tips, is that, and actually this is a requirement, but maybe think about it already now, is that in your board of directors, you want a different level or as many different level of skills as possible, right? Because these are the guys that will be helping you in your early stages. You want to have a lawyer in there, you want to have somebody with built environment in there. They could be a QS, a contractor. You want to have an accountant to help you with some of the accounting, the structuring questions. And remember, I guess ideally as board of directors, they won't necessarily be earning a fee in that early stage, but you want their advice and their experience. So don't just put in your entity board of directors as family and friends. But if you do put family and friends, put family and friends that can add value and that have the different skills and experience. Because once you are properly set up, it is a requirement from the Shra that these people have, you've got a legal person, ideally somebody with HR or comms. But in the other training, they go into this in quite a lot of detail. But I think for today, we just want to emphasize, in your thinking already, just think about who will add value once I'm established, who will give us good advice as an entity and help us grow. Okay. But yeah, I guess from a governance structure perspective, these are some of the considerations: audits, code of conduct, the risk management systems. So the Shra will want to see sort of some of these documents. And we also said, Hore, we've got templates that we can look that would give you guidance. When you do put it together, don't go online and copy and paste and you without necessarily localizing and publicizing it, right? So if there's a lot of public information that's available on risk management systems and conflict of interest policies. So if you do, I guess, use those that are publicly available, make sure you review it and where applicable, quote or reference, because we also don't want to promote plagiarism. So now somebody submits this thing and it's written Horeke Karabelo SHI, meanwhile they are James SHI. So we don't want to be caught out with such. And the SHRA does pick it up during external assessment. Okay, just want to see. Okay, cool. I think that's I guess, sort of the few slides on governance or legal form, which is quite critical sort of in your path in developing an SHI. I think the next few slides will speak more to the practical business of social housing, the different departments, and the different roles and responsibilities. I think, is there anything on, I think, what we've covered so far? Does it make sense? I know it's obviously a bit of a high level, but so, okay. So let me first say, thanks, Barbara, that as an SHI, there is a expectation and a regulatory requirement that you will manage your own stock. Whereas, and I'll maybe go back and we start adding that as a consideration of legal form. Whereas this as an ODA, you can outsource your property management out to a property management company, right? So that's another consideration. The SHRA has made concessions for emerging entities to say, okay, you're an emerging SHI, this is your first project, you don't have the systems and the processes, we will allow you to outsource property management, but it'll be only for a limited period of time while you are acquiring the skills and the resources. And I think I saw some names from Bupebes were in the room. I think they were here earlier on. Scanning quickly. Okay, I don't see the colleagues from Butsebeso, but colleagues from Butsebeso, they're a new emerging SHI. They've got a project in Newcastle. And sort of their intention as a new entity is, oh, fine. Actually, I guess they've considered both, right? They've considered to say, do we outsource or do we insource? The intention is, you can make both decisions, but as an ODA, typically a lot of the ODAs that we know, they outsource completely, but the SHIs want to insource, but there is a discretion or an application that you can do to the SHRA. Colleagues from DESO, what is your plan? If maybe we can ask, have you considered your property management strategy? Not yet. Okay. Right, you don't have them on the call, or they just stepped away a bit. Tabila, are you there? I also look at my chat. All right, okay, good. Okay, cool. So fine, let me move on. But yeah, I think just to emphasize. So from a business perspective, let me get my laser pointer. So there's core areas, right? In managing a social housing project or a social housing business. We speak about client services, we speak about property management, we speak about financial management as core support and internal management. We're going to emphasize client services. So this is typically, I guess, your leasing department, your community engagement. So, they probably, this is, I guess, they offer sort of client services, client interaction services. So that's quite key. Then we also have a property management team, typically, and they would be responsible for the brick and mortar stuff, right? Facilities management, maintenance. They would support, in some instances, the client services department with collections and utilities management as well would fall in here. In some organization, there's typically a bit of a overlap between client services and property. But I think for the purpose of today, we can make a distinction to say client services is the leasing team that processes lease, accepts application forms, provides cancellation notices, but also the community development leg where they do community development, tenant engagement, and such. And from a support services perspective, we speak about financial management, your creditors control, your bookkeepers, such services or such functions is the right word, and internal management, HR, yeah, depending on the size of the organization, right? So you might not necessarily have a big internal management, but be aware that I guess, especially from an application perspective, the SHRA will want to know what your plan is. Good. Just looking at the time, project delivery. Okay, so yeah, maybe, and I'll bring this up as a question. So the question came in earlier from Talent actually, that what about project costs, right? What if I plan to do this thing for 500,000, and suddenly the total cost is 520? How do I manage that risk? Do we have any construction developers, QSs, or construction what do we call, yeah, construction companies? Is anybody sort of in that area of business that can help us out? How do you manage such? I'm not a construction person. I'm not a QS, so my experience is very limited. No. Okay. But yeah, if there's any ideas, just let us know. But maybe in response, there's a few ways you can manage that risk. So firstly, Talent and colleagues, in your feasibility, in your costings, right? So what the QSs will do is they will add a line item for and now the word is slipping me. I'm gonna call it for contingencies. But in your bill of quantities, there's a very particular sort of line item that your QS will allocate, and it's normally around 5 to 7% for possible contingencies that might be as a result of delays in construction, material prices going up, stoppages and such things. So yeah, there's some good best practices around it to say, okay, fine. At this stage, when we are doing our costing, we know that the brick is 1 rand. So the first level that they would then do, or you would insist or tell them is, yes, we are doing this costing today, but I only expect to build in a year's time. So what they would then do is actually have an escalation to say, yes, we know that today a brick is 1 rand, but how much will a brick cost in 12 months or 18 months time? But also then they would then say your construction period is a year, right? So ultimately your construction will only end in, I guess, 2 years from today. So in their, I guess, costing models, they can then also equally escalate your costs to next year, but also work out and say you won't be buying all the bricks at the same time. You will be buying them. There'll be a bit of a cash flow, and then they do cost escalation. So that's the other area on how escalations are managed in a construction project. But also through the contingencies, because especially if you're doing like a brownfield, you think all the plumbing is sharp, or you've done your building condition audit. You get there, you break a couple of walls, and the plumbing is rotten, and you have to replace all the plumbing. Then you use contingencies. We must also be honest and clear. If you go to the SHRA and say this thing will cost me 400,000, and they approve you for, let's say, 500, and they approve your project based on that, you can't go back and say, Ish, I made a mistake, it's 510. Can you give me an extra 10? It just doesn't work like that. So what you submit and what is approved is what the SHRA will pay you on, and I guess ultimately what your lenders will pay you on. So just be aware of that. Which is also why we encourage, if you are doing a sort of a big project, 800 units or 1,000 units, rather do it in phases. So do phase 1, 300, you submit an application, it gets approved, you build it. You go, you do phase 2, you do new costings, you get that approved, you build. It's possibly slightly a bit more work, but it'll save you a lot of money in the future. But you might also benefit, which is what we said yesterday, on possible increases in the Shra grant or a relaxation in other areas. Maybe your funders now say, oh, okay, now you've built the first project, you've got some track record, let's give you some concessionary funding. Now nale balance sheet nyana, so just think about that as well. But I think on this slide, we just want to say that I just want to emphasize it starts with an idea, right? It starts with an idea. And after that idea, you go and you knock on a few doors, you go to the Shra and they give you some training. We start developing your project concept. You knock again on the Shra's door and you say, hey man, Shra, I've done this much. Can I get a feasibility grant? And to develop my concept, my project a bit more. And they would then employ, additional resources to help you. You go, you build this thing, contracting, JBCC contracts, NEC, whatever you prefer. And you identify your contractor, then project implementation, project closure. This is a typical, very simple, high-level project delivery model. So there's obviously a lot of details within. Then once you do project closure, or just before, you go back to the Shra and say, Shra, please can I apply for a staff gear up grant? And the Shra then says, okay, we're going to give SHI your staff gear up grant so that once the project is complete, you have the right people, the right resources in order to, to let this building. And then the Shra will keep their 10%. Then once your building is let and you've met all their requirements, they do the last disbursement. So this is a good summary of how a typical project in social housing will work or will follow. And it's not different whether you are doing social housing or you are doing affordable housing or doing commercially. It's pretty much the same. Just want to see. And this is the detailed. I think the professional, the build environment professionals will speak about stages. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. But I think this will be dealt a bit more in the other training. So I think just maybe use the one that we spoke about as a baseline. But the principle is really the same. So that's stage 3 and stage 4. Stage 4 being when you are now going out to tender. And here, when you get here as well, it's important. Guys like the NHFC will want to know what is your delivery model. And equally the Shra as well, and in some of the forms, I think QSB, QSC, you must state that are you going to go with like a turnkey development solution where you go and say, no, I'm going to hire, I'm trying to think who's a big turnkey developer. I don't know, Calgro M3, that's a big one, yeah. A Calgro kind of entity, they bring in their professionals, their construction, and whether the price of bread or the price of bread goes from 1 randa or 2 randa, you are entering into a fixed delivery contract. And you want and they would agree and contract to say they will deliver. So that, especially for startup is a less risky model. The slightly riskier model is to say, I'm going to go on public tender. I'm going to appoint my professionals fully. I'll pay for them, as part of the project cost, and I'll get a contractor. And that contracting, I guess varies, right? There's obviously the cost could go from 500,000 to the 520. It's not a fixed project costing. So those are, I guess, some of the consideration, especially when you get to stage 4. But do think about it as well earlier in the process. And there's pros and cons for both. Cool. And then stage 5 being project implementation. I think, I think that's a typical built environment project cycle. Cool. Management of social housing. This is yeah, sorry. I think it's just the recap slide, but I'll skip it. We covered this. And this is the same slide in a lot more detail on what client services departments must cover. And just, yeah, I guess some details just around, I guess the nitty-gritties of client services and managing stock. But I think at a principal level, it's if when you think of the social housing program and what we said both this morning and yesterday, you've got people coming from different backgrounds, from different incomes that are now living in your project. Maybe where I used to stay, I could hang clothes on a balcony. I could just leave my door open. I could consume water as I see fit. My children just ran around and then created a ruckus. So now, because we're coming in different environments, now you are in a more structured environment. It's important for social housing that your client services department, be it leasing, property management to a small extent, or community development, promoting a good managed environment therefore for residents. But equally, John spoke about transparencies, accountability. You must have processes where people can complain, can give you feedback. And that's, I guess, also embodied in the Social Housing Act. Just some slides on customer service broadly and where it impacts in the social housing business. Obviously, we would, there's a touch point on marketing, on taking on units from a customer service. So I've got a new building, people will move on or move in rather, or apply. So that's take on. Really community liaison, communication and liaison, just referring to how customer service interacts with the community broadly, including at a community development level. Do you have programs for the kids? How are you creating this harmonious environment? To give you an example, we've got SHIs at different stages that would have kids for programs. What programs for kids? After school, so kids after school, there's somebody who looks after them. They can go into a certain room and do homework, and it doesn't have to cost you money, right? That's important. They've got programs to like gardening programs is a good classical one. So in the area, they would buy the tenant seeds to promote gardening. Those tenants can then sell even the vegetables that come. They can use the vegetables as well. Yeah, so just think of community liaison quite broadly. It's also just to help with, stabilizing the community, if I can call it that. Zenith is asking what the role of CSOS is, and I'll speak to that and just expand what CSOS is as well, just to make sure that everybody's aware. But yeah, hey, just complaints management, community dev. We spoke lightly about, and I think in the slides on the Shara doing customer audits, it's important that you as an SHI as well, you do customer satisfaction surveys. Know why your customers are leaving so that you can fix those issues. Do exit interviews, right? Am I leaving because I'm unhappy with service? Or am I leaving because I've got a different job? Am I leaving because the utilities are high? I can't stress the importance that your teams and you as the leader within the organization, you are looking at these and you have the processes around customer satisfaction as well as exit interviews, because it really gives you an honest reasons why people are leaving, so that you can, I guess, react and improve. Cool. So let me speak to CSOS. And I must remember what community, what is CSOS? Just help me with the full name there. Community services ombudsman. Let me find it. CSOS. So CSOS, while I look for the full name, is CSOS is an agency of the Department of Human Settlement, similar to how the SHRA is an agency of the Department of Human Settlements, the PPRA, that's the oldest state agency affairs board. Who else is there? The Housing Development Agency. There's a few agencies that belong to the CSOS. All right, got it. It's the Community Schemes Ombuds Service. So CSOS currently primarily looks after what is it? Sectional title. You know, they've got the ambit to oversee sectional title units and the Sectional Title Act, but as well as the homeowners association. So if you are staying in an estate or in a sectional title building with different sections, you pay a certain levy to CSOS, and you know, they sort of become an entity where if tenants or as a resident owner, if you're disgruntled, you can go. So for us in the social housing, the CSOS plays a very limited to zero role. John, I don't know if you're aware, you know, I guess I'm aware of some discussions within social housing or the SHRA with CSOS, but at this stage, you know, I think if we look at the act that made CSOS, they do not yet have sort of a leg. The equivalent from an ombud perspective, maybe I must say, in the social housing space would be the rental tribunal. That's probably the most, you know, sort of similar. We obviously don't pay levies to the rental tribunal, so their powers are also slightly different in that levies are paid to CSOS, and they can sort of, I guess, those levies then help, you know, sort of as an insurance policy now of sort as well. So we in the social housing space, we don't have an equivalent to that component of CSOS. Is that clear, Zenith? Anybody else? How are we doing on time? Okay, probably management. So yeah, this is also a short few slides that speaks to the key themes and responsibilities of the property management team. Obviously, when you submit an application, you must have policies, processes, and systems. I spoke to say that there is now an understanding within the SHRA that because you are not yet as a new SHI at property management stage, let's get you into the process. And when you are sort of getting that CCG, for instance, then we will want some of these policies. But just be aware, you need to have policies. You need to have a planned maintenance cycle. So this would say that, you know, every 3 or 5 years, I'm going to do waterproofing. I'm going to paint my facade. You know, yeah, I think that, sort of the big ticket items that you do at a particular frequency. So you need to do that, and your building condition audits will inform it. Reactive maintenance policies. How do you react if a tenant says, I've got a burst geyser? You know, is it a high priority, low priority? What's your turnaround time, right? This obviously impacts on service. You have to monitor your cost to income ratio. In a building of 200 units, we made the example yesterday to say typically you will have 4 security guards, 2 during the day and 2 at night. If your income is limited, your cost to income ratio is likely to be high. If you have a greater spread of income, say 200 units, you'll have a greater income to divide the cost. And the SHRA tracks very specific indicators. So they'll say your cost to income ratio must be, I don't know, fine, they use an amount now to say it should be your cost per unit must be, I think, 1,500. 1,700, and if you're an ODA, it must be less. But this is an important metric to measure. Property management must look after facilities, but also equally manage tenant satisfaction surveys, so this informs your property management strategies and policies on maintenance and both reactive, scheduled, and planned. Good. But yeah, I think this is just a summary sheet on a good summary slide to say what to consider. It's not only about buying the or constructing the building. There we go. 1.6. Thanks, Tabile. Confirming. Tabile is confirming the what? I must say the right word. The rent cost per unit. So for every the rent cost per unit that it must cost. I think in the private sector they spoke about a cost to income ratio. In social housing, we have translated that cost to income, which would have been a percentage, to a rent value. And currently it's 1.6 for SHIs. ODAs is lower. From memory, it might be 1,450, but I can just go back and check. MOEs, it's much higher, but we won't go into those details. Good. Governance, also a good summary one. We won't go into the details of it. We've spent quite a bit of time. And the roles of board of directors, they must have different skill sets. What is senior management able to do? And especially think about it when you are running an organization, it must be clear where levels of authority lie. Can a housing supervisor approve maintenance for 20,000, right? Or does that go to managers? Can the staff speak to I don't know, the media, if media comes to say, hey, we've heard there's some allegedly maladministration, or you as an SHI are cheating staff and you are charging them water and electricity. So I think at a governance level, it's quite key that your governance documents are clear on limits and authority, identifying your key stakeholders. What is your financial management processes? In as far as paying of invoices as practical examples, and performance management systems, internal management. So this would be like HR stuff, right? So I think, this is some of the things that key themes that the SHRA will want to see in your governance structure. We're not doing too bad, we've pushed. I guess the next slide is just, I guess we are saying this is the social housing program. It can change people's lives. It can change your life as an entrepreneur. You can't go anywhere in the country and a bank gives you a 70, or say anybody gives you a 70, 80% grant to build social housing. So I think the program is also a good way as entrepreneurs to get into the space. But we must also be honest about the challenges that we face so that you go into the space knowing some of these challenges, and how to possibly put processes and policies in place upfront so that you don't experience what some of the distressed SHIs have experienced. But so let me maybe before I go and move to challenges, ask if there's any questions on this, on what we've covered this morning.
Hello,
Go ahead.
Karabelo. Thanks.
Go ahead, Nona.
Okay. Thanks, Karabelo, for such an informative session. I'm trying to understand or to educate myself about this 1.6 cost per income. I can't really get a grip as to what does it mean. It's 1,600 rands per income. Can you please elaborate on that so that I can understand what it really means?
No, perfect. That's actually good. All right. And I just want to bring something else up while I do that. Okay. So, so I'm just bringing an Excel document and I can just show it practically as well. Just one more. So, I guess earlier on we presented the different, I guess, rental income bands in social housing, right? So that is clear. So one way to think about it or to process it would be to say, let's say on average, let me find rental. To simplify it, we are saying rental, let's say on average, given the 5 income bands, your average rental in your project in Senton is 4,000 rand. It's a bit generous, but let's say it's 4,000 rand. So this would be on your income side, right? So rental is income. So let's say income. But you will also have expenses. Yeah? So your expenses could be what? Could be what are typical expenses in a building, in an actual building? Security. Yeah? Security.
Right, maybe.
Yep, rates. Any other takers? Cleaning.
Common property.
Cleaners, maybe. Okay.
Yeah. Common prop. I'll just summarize. What else do you pay for?
Maintenance.
Okay, maintenance is a good one. Old. Customize that. So now I'm going to put just some small numbers, right? So let's say security is costing us. Okay, so I must go a step back. You have a big security contract, and that big security contract is let's say get 10,000. But if we take the total contract and divide it by your number of units, we'll get to a smaller number. So let's say we are even paying for security is costing us 100 rand. Rates and taxes, we are operating in the city of Johannesburg, and there's a rates rebate. We are paying 20 rand. Let's pick some big numbers. Cleaning is very expensive. We are in Cape Town, and government says cleaners must now get the salary of a teacher. I think I saw the headline. We are paying 1,000 rand for cleaning. 1,000. Common property expenses. Let's say these are whatever. I don't know. Let's say these are 300 rand. 300. Maintenance. I'm just gonna put 250. Yeah. Yeah. So if I add these, we are on 1,670. So what that 1.6 is saying is, in order for you to incur the 4,000 rand rental, your expenses, your operating expenses are 1,006, right? The smart guys will say this is your net operating income. Operating income. Yep. Fine. I guess in other areas they'll speak about a profit, but let's simplify it here. That maybe I'm gonna zoom in. Yeah. So this is what it would look like. This is a typical profit, just to simplify it. So we're getting for the whole building or for one unit, the rent is 4,000. These are our expenses. Our expenses are costing us 1.6. And per unit profit, it's 2.3, right? Per unit. I guess I've brought it down to unit. So this 1,600 cost to income refers to this number, to say that for your operating costs, or it should not cost you more than 1,006 to acquire or to be able to gain this 4,000 rand rental income. I don't know if it's clearer. Does it make sense?
it is clearer, ne? But now maybe that 1.6 is for a certain bracket of people that are renting. For example, if some tenants are renting 750, for
Yeah.
example, ne?
Yeah.
Which are the lowest maybe renting
Yes.
people. Is there any ratio that 1.6 now or formula that determines that 1.6 for all the brackets of the different levels of people that are paying
Okay.
rent?
No, I'm clear. No, that's a good point to clarify. So this 1.6 is the average for the whole building for all your tenants. So from the tenant that pays as 750, the other one pays 2,000, the other one pays 3,000, the other one is paying Buma 4.5. So we recognize that there are different incomes or different rental amounts as well. So the 1.6 is your average. So we will take, so think of it at a building level. I guess here I went to the unit level, but the point is that this is at a building level. So you won't now be receiving rental of 4,000, but the rental amount will be, I don't know, maybe you got a big building and you are collecting 1 million per month. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You are collecting potentially 1 million, right? And then I guess these as well will be higher. So then the 1.6, we look at it at a total level and not at an individual. I don't know if I've clarified it better. So we don't have an indicator for what should be your ratio if you are in band 1 and band 2, band 3. But that's also because the program recognizes that we need a lot more people that earn more in order to subsidize for those that don't earn as much.
Oh, all right, all right. So I guess the landlord would have to allocate those expenses according to the brackets, to the income brackets. But at the end of the day, the average should be 1.6 for the whole or rental income.
That's correct, no. Yeah.
Okay, all right. No, I hear what you're saying.
And also think of it practically as well. And maybe I guess I broke it down too low. So when you get invoice security from your service provider, he'll say or she'll say, I'm giving you what, say 4 security guards and it's 20,000 per month. Per month? I don't know what security guards cost these days. It's 20,000 rand. So you will get one invoice which you pay. For rates, you will get one invoice for your entire building with 200 units, etc., etc. So then we take your total income for the whole building with your total expense, and then we would say how many units do we have. Then that will give us the ratio per unit.
No, thank you very much. It's clearer now. It's much clearer. Thank you.
Thank you for asking that and asking us to clarify. I just want to bring, maybe it's worth emphasizing. I just want to show colleagues if I've got a good, okay, yeah, here we go. Okay. So what I want to just, maybe it's because we spoke about the compliance unit and quarterly reports that you would submit to the SHRA, and them checking whether you are I guess on par or not. But this is how, just at a high level, I think sort of some of the key indicators, right? So rent management. So you need to be collecting rental on a monthly basis and you want to manage your vacancies. So as an SHI, you must collect 95%. Let's see if I can zoom in some more. Rent collection target as an SHI is 95%. As an MOE, 95, and it's also 95. So this is, I guess, what that means. vacancy as well. Inversely, you must, I guess, you must be 98% occupied, i.e., this is why I think we write less than 2%. And we've got different indicators as well for debtors management. This is that total operating cost. Yeah, that's the right word that we wanted. So housing stock management, it speaks of a total operating cost per unit per month. There we go. And the target is, fine, maybe mine is a bit old, but the current target is 1550. The 1.6 is the best practice. I think this is where more or less best practice is. And you can see we're speaking about, I think the 1.6 that Tabile referred to. It's here as an SHI. Municipal entities, we are slightly generous. Their target is 1080. They tend to be a bit bulkier, but as an ODA is 1.3. Okay. And this is what on a quarterly basis the SHRA would monitor you, or the compliance unit would monitor you against. They've got primary indicators, other indicators as well, which I think for the purpose of today won't really go into too much detail. But they are measuring your debtors book. How old is your debtors book at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, your profitability, some financial indicators, etc., etc. So I guess I just wanted to show this. I think these are definitions. So just so that it's clear, and you know what it means. Any questions or input? Colleagues, we actually, just I guess literally at the end of our session. So maybe if there's things that, as I mentioned earlier, that you felt that we didn't cover adequately or we covered lightly, I think we can use maybe the next 10 minutes to cover that as well. So there's no silly questions. All questions are welcome. And you can also make use of the chat. John, are you still on the call?
I've always been here.
Shame, I know. I guess it's my terrible way of saying, "Hey, John," to my computer, to my. But I see that we've got a question from Lungi. See that maybe I think you are better positioned to answer. But maybe Lungi, if we let you maybe just explain it, if your mic is sharp, or just explain what you mean by the SHRA office not functioning in the Free State. Then John will assist me.
Yes, no. I'm raising this one from the information you said that, or I got information to say the HS division of the support is not operational in the Free State. For someone like me who is the first timer in this space, who wants to explore and wants to undertake this initiative, how do I go about as a first timer? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That's clear. Go for it, John.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, in Free State, let's just look at Free State for a moment. I think that's where your question is revolving around. We had one delivery agent by the name of Freshco, and they had, I'm just thinking, Freshco always had one project, I guess. I think the Brandbach, although it was done in phases, but it was just one project, north of 1,000+ units. There are a number of issues there that led to the SHI going belly up and being put under administration. That project currently is under administration, which essentially says the SHRA is through a representative that has been placed there, managing the affairs of that property. Now, outside the Brandbach, the state has only 2, if not mistaken, or 2 or 3 restructuring zones, because I think that's where you start. Is that Mulungisi? You said Mulungisi?
Yeah.
So it's good to identify where those restructuring zones are. Bloemfontein or Mangaung is the one that I know of, and I think Welcome, Virginia is another. I can't remember which there's a third one, but I've included a list. I mean, in the list of handouts here, a list of restructuring zones. So you look in that list and pick up where in the Free State are there restructuring zones. Now, once you have established that, I think the next question to ask yourself, and I think the last 2 days, more particularly today, Gabriel has really tried to assist one who is in between decision as to whether do you want to come through as an ODA or as an SHI. So that will be perhaps the next step you move to say, do I come in as an ODA? And he's pointed to us the pros and cons of both modalities. So that will be then that is in the event that you want to go for an SHI, you need to then get yourself accredited. Now there's a whole process on that. In fact, we have training on SHI accreditation in that first week of December. So perhaps join us, Mlungisi, for that one, where we'll be unpacking at great length how and when and with who do you go and get yourself accredited as a social housing institution. If you say, no, I'm not interested in being a social housing institution, I want to do this thing as a private developer, or what we sometimes call ODAs, other delivery agents. That process simply says you just contact our colleagues in project accreditation. That's the first step. And say to them, I'm an interested ODA. I have identified a project opportunity in, let's say, Welcome, and this is a restructuring zone. And they will then engage with you in terms of the forms that you need to complete and documents that you need to submit to get that project registered into the pipeline. I think that's a long and short of how do you start, either as an SHI or as an ODA. I will not want to go into the nitty-gritties in terms of processes regarding project accreditation and SHI accreditation, because there are separate trainings on that. But I think that's where you start. Does that help?
Very cool. You've got a thumbs up, John.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. It does a great deal, Mr. John. And I think if there will be any other issue, maybe some follow-up, just to fill me in on the issues of NHI.
Yeah.
Is it NHI? NHI and
SHI.
Hey.
Hey, there's too many acronyms, you know.
Too many acronyms. Yeah, the National Health Insurance. Yeah. So no, definitely I will make a follow-up and then maybe have those bilaterals as I go through the processes, because I've got a plan. This, I want it to be my exit strategy to my employment currently. You know, I'm planning it for the next 3 years. Next 2 to 3 years, it should pick up, and then I should be participating in it. I see it as a very, very lucrative business, entity that I can venture into. Thank you very much, my good sis.
Okay. I think Karabel also touched on the PSCs, and this is for everyone else, the provincial steering committees. In fact, we will also as part of the pack of handouts that we'll share with you, include a list of these provincial steering committees across the 9 provinces. So if you are sitting in Northwest, you'll see who the chairperson and the secretariat is for the Northwest PSC. It would pay you better to also attend those. A lot of them are done virtually. You just write to the secretariat to include you in the invitees list and attend those, because I think it's a good platform to also gain much more in-depth exposure in terms of the specific province and locality where you want to implement. You may come in or be invited as an observer at first, and over time, of course, when you have a project and you are clear about what you're doing, you may also be given a slot to present your potential project in that forum. So there are PSCs colleagues that are also good advocate for development of social housing. In some provinces, depending on which province you are in, they function quite well. They have PSC every month. Other than that, in some provinces, these are held quarterly. There are some provinces that are still lagging behind, even not holding PSCs on quarterly basis, but predominantly most of the provinces would have at least one PSC meeting in a quarter. So do start there as well. Was there another hand?
Yes, I think I saw Lemohang earlier, but it might have gone down. Lemohang?
No, I'm covered. Thank you.
Good.
Right. Okay, I think if that is all, Nolo, your hand is up.
And maybe Nolo, if you don't mind, through you, John, just before you come up, colleagues, I guess we were just putting some of the websites for the different funders. If you want to just click on them and then make yourself aware. We spoke about them yesterday. But I also just want to add, as we sort of wrap down and do a Q&A, that Mpho is gonna shortly just do a evaluation form. She'll put it on the chat. If we can ask you, please just to complete it. And there it is. While we, I guess, sort of are wrapping up, just so that we can get feedback on the training program, and please be honest, and critical on areas of improvement, how you found the content, how does the virtual work, etc. So please give us your feedback on the training. And what other trainings I think you would like, but the form Mpho has put on the chat right now. Thanks. Nolo, back to you.
You may want to unmute yourself because I see you're still muted.
Yeah. Ms. Menkubela?
Okay. All right. While I think she's still sorting out that, I think let me also just address the closing items in terms of our program for the last 2 days. So yeah, there will be a mail shot that will be coming your way, and I've seen a lot of requests for the presentations for the last 2 days. So we'll include the PowerPoint presentations of the last 2 days. We'll include a guide that has been written up on this topic, Introduction to Social Housing. We'll also include a list of restructuring zones. It's a user-friendly list. You just look at the province that you are interested in, and it does give you a whole long list of towns and cities where the restructuring zones that have been gazetted are, and that's where you essentially have to locate project opportunities. That will also include a list of the PSCs that I've just spoken to, and Carmelo has given us a great detail in the morning about what are the functions of the PSCs. Carmelo, I think yesterday you also mentioned the directive, the latest directive on the CCG adjustment. I think we'll also include that.
Yeah.
I thought because all these trainings. And I saw you included it in one of the slides, but I will just include it as well as one of the things, an additional list of documents to share rather, the training program, because there are still a few more training topics that we are going to be running before the December close. And then when we come back, I think as early as February, we should also be running more other trainings like project packaging. So I'll share those with you in the pack. There was just a question just yesterday, and I just noted it, Garabelo, in terms of, and I think it was Lerato, I don't know if she's still here today, just a picture in terms of the provincial municipal data around the demand in provinces. Remember that long discussion?
Yes.
So I don't know. I don't know if I captured it correctly. Was that going to be an additional handout to include, or was it dealt with in that discussion yesterday?
John, it was dealt with. The only thing is when I went on the website, they're looking for fine. Actually, we saw it as well. Some of the the studies that the Shra has done at a provincial level under resources. But I also think there's a few missing. The only thing is I remember those files are quite thick. Yeah, Northern Cape, I've seen KZN. So maybe how we deal with it is through, I guess, the marketing team. If they can put those, I think there's about 4 or so large demand studies that were done. Then I guess colleagues or attendees can then pick them up on the website. But under resources, I did see them. But yeah, so that's we dealt with it in that manner. But also just saying at a supply side, mentioning and put the note to say attendees can use the social housing portal .org.za to see where the different social housing institutions or projects are across the country. But yeah, I think that's how we dealt with it.
Yeah. So I think that's it then in terms of the handouts that we will share with you in the next couple of days. I think I might probably send you the handouts separate because with regard to recordings, which we also want to include, it does sometimes take time because they still have to be edited and what have you. So I'll do 2 mail shots, one and which will come most probably sooner than later, would be all these documents that we've just listed, and then the last one would be on the actual recordings as well, just in case you want to replay some of the discussions that we had in the last 2 days. Other than that, join us in the first week of December. I'm just looking at the exact dates.
I think 3 and 4.
Yeah. 3 and 4, we are having SHI accreditation training. And yeah, I think that would be also valuable for some of you or those of you who would be interested in getting yourself accredited as social housing institutions. I do want to just flag that, in fact, when we look at saturation, we try and encourage more SHIs or more people to look at establishing in provinces such as Limpopo because there's very limited presence. In the Northern Cape, Free State is another one. There is not much happening in Northwest as well. So this is where, you could, if you are considering establishing, these are some of provinces where we see underperformance of the social housing program delivery. So consider those as well, because I know that a lot of us, when we consider joining the program or being partners in delivering the social, we look at the normal subjects. I mean, typical suspects like the Gauteng, the KZN, and the Western Cape, which are much more easier to do. But do consider all those other provinces as well, because the program is a national program, and as Carmelo indicated yesterday, it's also a program that's targeted at urban centers in those provinces. Right, on that score.
Maybe before we've got some hands, John. I can hear we have got closure.
Yeah, I was going there, but I see that Nolo's hand is still up. I'm not sure if
fine, but also
Liz
Zenith as well. We've got a hand from Zenith.
Zenith, let's hear.
Hi, colleagues. Thank you so much for the informative 2 days. I just wanted to find out, is there a series of windows that the SHRA opens throughout the year within which either an ODA or SHI must submit the proposal for projects, or can the entities do the submissions at any time?
So submissions can be done at any given time, so long as your application is ready for submission, you just submit. However, we've always advised that before you make any submission, whether it is for project accreditation or SHI accreditation, first link up with the process owners. In fact, maybe it would be good to share their contact details in the handouts as well. And really try and help get them to help and guide you with regard to what would be expected in those applications before you submit, so that we minimize the back and forth of this document is missing, or this document does not meet the requirements and so forth. So yeah, but other than that, a direct answer is you submit at any given time. The consideration and approval of what you submitted happens every quarter, though. So if, for example, you would submit something here now in November, this thing will probably be considered in the January round of meetings. Let's say if it was a project application and this project is from the readiness level point of view, it's really matured and it's ready. That application would then go and serve in the committees in January, somewhere there. So every quarter there is those sittings where applications for accreditation, either for a project or for SHI, are considered on a quarterly basis. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. It does. Thank you so much.
Great. Okay, I think we have dealt with.
So go for it. Shane, no, while you were speaking, John, I guess I just wanted to pick up on your point on distribution of social housing, right, across the country, just for the benefit of I guess the attendees, and emphasizing that where things are. So I've just put up a quick image that it's a bit slightly old, but it's not too old. So and the numbers don't move significantly. So this would have been by end of 2023-24 quarter 3. But what I want to maybe just point attendees to is what you're saying, that there's a high concentration of both SHIs and projects in Gauteng, right? So if you look at the distribution in Gauteng, which is here, I don't know where my, yeah, there we go, okay, laser. If you look at the distribution in Gauteng, it's just over 16,000, and I was making I think I alluded to Northern Cape, which has probably about there's another project ongoing, but essentially we're saying it's small, but Gauteng has the largest number of social housing units, followed by, on the bottom side, slightly KZN, then the Western Cape, and Eastern Cape as well has just under 5,000. But if you look at Limpopo, there's just one delivery agent operating there, who's Masipala. Mpumalanga, there's an opportunity. Northern Cape, Northwest, currently, it was about 1,200. So just a visual representation of John's point around looking at establishing yourself in places like Free State, Northwest, Northern Cape, but also to emphasize that you don't have to be physically in the Northwest to operate in the Northwest, right, at the moment. So, but it helps, but we have developers that are sitting in Durban, but with operations in Eastern Cape and Western Cape. They have staff there that work, but head office is not in those provinces, and they just have small regional offices. Good, Shane. I think, yeah, that was me. And maybe to also just acknowledge John James's input just around average income of social housing, of the back of the discussion on cost and income, or just to say typically the average income is about 3.3, which is correct. Yeah. Good. I think that was me. Nolo, are you back before we close? No.
No, I'm not back, Arabelo. I don't know why my hands always get up. All right, sorry about that.
No. But I think from my side, yeah, I just want to thank, I guess, yeah, thanks to the SHRA, thanks to the attendees, and I guess Mpo and the national team on the back as well, just supporting us through this. And we hope to see you back again in 2 weeks' time, or 3 weeks' time, in the first week of December, for the other training. I hope it was valuable. You found it valuable. Through John, we are available. So feel free to send any questions there. Just the last reminder as well, just to put your details on the link, or not the details, but just give us feedback on the link that Mpo shared. It's the third one from the bottom. And also just to say, John will email out the pack in two separate instances as well. I think that's it for me. John, are we dismissed, sir? Okay. Yeah, I think that's a wrap, colleagues. Thank you very much. Have a good day further, and good Christmas if we don't see each other.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, John. Thank you, Karabelo.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Ciao.